Okay, you guys are probably going to be seeing this dev blog a lot. I think it's one of the most important dev blogs in the history of League, and there is a lot to cover here. There are multiple major changes. I'm not just saying that to exaggerate. This is one of the big ones. I think that WASD, as I'll be calling it, is going to completely change League of Legends. It's the end of an era, frankly. And, you know, the first 15 years of League are not going to be the same as the next 10 if it's around that long, because of this change. And the other changes maybe aren't so big in terms of their impact, but they're quite significant as well, like the changes to smurfing. So let's go through it together.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paul, aka Pabro.
And I'm Andre, also known as Medler. Today is July 28th, and as usual, anything that happens after that won't be covered in this video. Now, in this dev update, we want to talk a bit about some things we've got coming over the next few patches, and we also want to talk about a key feature we're working on for League's future.
But first, Season 3. This season, we're going to be pulling characters and storylines from Noxus and Spirit Blossom together. LeBlanc, Inara, Otacon, and Xin Zhao will all be playing a vital role as we continue. And we're super excited to return to China this year, where we'll be celebrating 15 years of Worlds.
We'll also be returning to the base Summoner's Rift map. We've been enjoying seeing all of your reactions to the new maps. And if you're a new map lover, don't worry, we've also still got more in store for the future. For now though, let's talk about some of the things you'll see in game real soon.
So they talked about Season 3. I think that they need to stop using this confusing terminology. It's getting really bad. So I'm just going to say it. They need to stop doing this. If the splits are now called seasons, so we had a term for this, right? For the longest time in League, there were no such thing as splits. There were just seasons. Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, Season 4, Season 5, Season 6, etc. We only got splits, I think, the terminology first came up in competitive play when they started splitting competitive play up into a summer split and a spring split, which really goes all the way back to 2013 at the start of the LCS, but Season 3. But I don't know if they were calling them summer split and spring split then. They may have. They may have just called it summer and spring. But they started using that terminology around competitive play. And as per usual, which I think is totally fine, Riot likes to mirror the solo queue environment to competitive play so that you feel kind of connected to the esport, or that you're going through a similar thing. So, for example, if they thought that it would be a good idea for keeping that kind of connection in place, and also for getting players to play more, that by resetting the game more over the last couple of years, as we saw in Season 14 and Season 13, they decided to try in Season 13 for the first time 2 splits in solo queue. And then in Season 14, they decided to try 3 splits in solo queue. The idea was to mirror competitive play, to keep that in line like they've been doing as a philosophical thing for a long time, but also to reset players more frequently so that they'd be forced to play more to climb back to their rank. The problem, of course, with doing that is it doesn't really give people a lot of time to kind of struggle and learn at their peak rank, which is necessary in order to have time to climb and get to a new higher rank in the future. And so that was obviously problematic, especially when they went to 3 splits, because you had such a limited amount of time that depending on how much you played, even if you played 3 or 4 games a day, depending on what rank you were, that was only enough during that split to get back to what rank you were before, and there was no time for you to learn at your peak rank or make any progress whatsoever, even if you were winning 55% of your games or something like that. And much less so if you were only winning 51% of your games. So that was really problematic, and so they stopped using splits. So now Season 15, there aren't any split resets anymore. So what they should have done is they should have said, okay, we have Season 15, and in Season 15 we have, no splits. We have, just no resets. Then they thought, well, we do kind of have thematic splits, right? We have 3 splits just like last year. It's just that they don't come with a ranked reset. So they wanted to use different terminology because they felt like if they called them splits, that people would think that there's a ranked reset. Well, it doesn't really matter whether you call it a split or a season because there's ranked resets at the start of every season since the beginning of time anyways. And then it's already season 15, or they were also trying to call it season 1 instead of season 15 to deal with the fact that it's season 15, but it's 2025, and the whole 10-year decade thing is confusing people because it'd be nice if the game lined up with like season 1 was 2001 and instead it's 2011, and so that throws people off because they get confused. It's a mess. All they need to do is say that it's season 15, split 1, split 2, and split 3, and that the splits just don't carry ranked resets. Because there's always been, for the past 2 years, there's been a ranked reset. Well, actually, not even just the past 2 years. Anytime there's ever been a split in solo queue, it's meant a ranked reset. Anytime there's been a season in solo queue, it's meant a ranked reset. So it doesn't matter whether you call it a season or a split, it's going to induce a ranked reset fear in people's mind, or they're going to think or be wondering about or confused about whether there's a ranked reset or not. So there's not a ranked reset, but they need to stop calling it season 1, but also we're playing in season 1, 2, and 3 at the same time. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's season 15 split 1, 2, and 3. Same thing with the patch notes. Why have we jumped to patch 26.15 or whatever, why are we not calling it patch 15.15, patch 15.16? There's no problem with it whatsoever. Now it's permanently messed up because now you've taken what was supposed to be the patch indication for season 26, and you've started randomly using it in season 15 or whatever, or 25, season 25. You started randomly using it now, and so now, like, what do you do? Because if you go back in 10 years, it'll be weird or messed up, or like people won't know how to refer to the patches since they've already been called the wrong thing. They have managed to screw this up so bad. They had such a simple system. Every year is a new season. Every split within a year is a split. The whole point of the word split comes from splitting the season or the year into, you're splitting it into multiple parts. So it doesn't make any sense that we're calling these seasons when they're, it's just not a new season. You can't have season 15 and season 3 going on at the same time. It makes zero sense. You shouldn't call the patch 25.15 when it's obviously season 15. And if it was season 3, why aren't we calling the patch notes 3.15 or something like that, or 3.16? Doesn't make any sense. They've managed to screw this terminology up so bad. So I have to get that out of the way. Be aware, like I said in the patch notes video, that there's no ranked reset, that this is just a thematic split. It's a split with no ranked reset. Everything's going to be fine. Unfortunately, and this is another confusing thing, although it's thematic, it also means end of season ranked rewards are coming because they give you the ranked rewards every 3 splits like they did last year. So there's a border and a skin and an icon that you can earn each split, and so your border will be locked in as well at the end of the thing. But they've messed this up so bad. It's unbelievable.
We need to talk about Xin Zhao. Many of you have been wondering why he's been a part of Spirit Blossom without actually having his new looks reflected in game.
And that's a great question.
Great question. Xin is one of the most popular jungle champions, and he's also just celebrated his 15th birthday. And while he's gotten some updates to his gameplay over the years, his appearance and animations remain stuck in the past.
Now, a lot of older champions are in need of visual updates, and we're working through the roster to update them, while also slotting them into seasons that make sense. So, we wanted to give Xin Zhao a visual update, similar to what we did with LeBlanc earlier this year. Xin Zhao's gameplay is entirely untouched, as we feel his kit holds up really well.
Outside of his base skin, all of the skins have been updated, and his current vaulted skins will be unvaulted for 2 weeks. So if you want to grab them, they'll be available for patches 25.17 and 25.18. Commando and Imperial Xin Zhao have also gotten additional upgrades, which have pushed them from 520 RP to 750 RP. You can still pick them both up at the lower price until Xin's update goes live in patch 25.17.
And that's it for Xin. Yep, nothing else. Okay, yeah. He's getting a new epic skin as well. That'll be out later in Act 1.
Speaking of skins, a few quick updates. Silas and Mel will be receiving prestige skins in the Mythic shop, and J4 and Zoe will get prestige skins on the Battle Pass in Acts 1 and 2, respectively.
I think that Xin Zhao getting a visual update makes no sense. I think that there's like 20 or 30 champions in the game that need a visual update over Xin Zhao, and so it just doesn't make any sense to me. I get that they're saying the reason why they're doing Xin Zhao like they did LeBlanc is because thematically they're like doing these kind of Spirit Blossom Ionian champions or something like that. Isn't Xin Zhao Demacian though? I don't really get that. It's Ionian Noxus. So, I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding that, but I probably don't know. I don't really know where Xin Zhao's from. Maybe he's from Ionia. But regardless, let me look that up real quick because that's kind of a sticking point. Is Xin Zhao Ionian? Okay, he's originally from Ionia, but then he was a gladiator in Noxus and escaped and now serves in Demacia. Okay, so he's part of all three, but he's Ionian, so that makes sense. So I get where they're coming from with that. I still think that it's not worth, especially when you're only pumping out a couple of VGUs or visual updates, even only visual, because they're not actually updating his gameplay, right? But when they're pumping out like 1, 2, maybe 3 visual updates a year, and you've got like 20 or 30 old champions that need an update worse than Xin Zhao does, I think that it was the wrong call to try to update a champion because of thematics, instead of one of the champions that needs it more. Now, one of the reasons why they're probably doing this is because they're, like they said, they're also giving Xin Zhao a new skin. They're trying to use it as an opportunity to sell other Xin Zhao skins that already exist by updating them and upping the price. He's a very popular champion right now, whereas if they waited, maybe he won't be as popular. The game is very heavily centered around China, and I think Xin Zhao is a super, like fan favorite type of champion for Chinese players as well. So I kind of understand where they're coming from. So just understand they're doing it for money. And they could just say that, right? Well, maybe they can't just say that, but they're doing it for money, and I think that that's fine. Should they choose to do a visual update on a champion that needs it less because they think it's more profitable? Probably. I mean, I don't think that there are champions in my mind right now that are so bad that they desperately need it. They've been doing a lot of visual updates more and more, and I think that it's been good. There are probably some champions if we went through the roster. If I had all the champions in front of me, we'd probably find some. But I don't think that there are champions that are like desperately bad. So that makes it a little bit better. I mean, we want the game to thrive. We want them to make money so that they can keep the game going, like we said. So just understand that the Xin Zhao change is a cash grab rather than it making sense as far as the champion needing a visual update. They're using the thematic thing, but the reason why they're tying it to the thematic thing is because of the theme, they can use it to sell more skins because of the theme. That's,
Now, we'll also be moving the Exalted Viego skin that we previously
which is
mentioned,
fine, but
passing to next year, since we want to take a bit more time to get that skin right.
I'm gonna skip part of this. You've probably seen this video like a million times. So it's just more stuff about skins. They're adding Doombots back to the game with a lot of, this is like a rotating game mode. They're bringing Doombots back with a lot of like extra difficult features or something like that. For me personally as a player, I don't care. I don't really have any thoughts on it. I'm a, more of a competitive player. If you want to see what they said, obviously you can go to the original video, or what I think is that you'll see this reacted to by so many people. Because this is the other changes are so important, you'll probably see it there, or have already seen it there.
More. We have a blog out today to cover more about this update to Doombots.
They keep calling it WASD. Okay, it's WASD. Okay, but it doesn't matter. But I'm going to be calling it WASD.
So we have a key update that we want to talk about that we believe will help new players in particular. WASD controls.
Hold on. Is it WASD? Is it WASD? Is it WASD? Is it what's up? I don't know, chat. Let us know.
WASD.
But for now, what are you going to call it?
It's WASD.
WASD, all right, he said it. Anyway, we found that a lot of new or returning players struggle a lot with League's controls early on. Click to move just isn't the sort of control scheme they're used to, and it puts a lot of people off, including many that we believe would otherwise really love the game. So we're introducing WASD as an alternate controls.
I agree with this to a certain extent. If you think about it, I don't know that I can think of many other games besides MOBAs where you right-click to move. I think almost every game nowadays is like, you use arrow keys or WASD or WASD, as we call it. So I sort of agree with that. But, there's a big but. Well, I'll let them finish, and then we'll talk about what I think about it.
To help get new players to the fun parts of League faster and with less friction. We're going to hand things over to the members of the WASD team to talk more about how and when you can get your hands on it and what you can expect.
Hey gamers, I'm Dashi Jador.
Okay, I'm going to say what I think about it before these guys talk, because I've heard what these guys say, and I'll have to respond to their points individually because I disagree with a lot of what they end up saying. So the idea is that you'll be able to choose to either move by right-clicking like we've been used to for 15 years, or you'll be able to move by using WASD. If you're not familiar how this would work, because it sounds counterintuitive because you need W for your abilities, etc., you basically are just going to have to shift your other keys and abilities to other things. So for example, in most games, like for example in CSGO, you move with WASD. In Minecraft and in Fortnite and all these other games, you move with WASD. In like Call of Duty, if you're playing it on the PC, you move with WASD. In PUBG, you move with WASD. Even in games that are sort of MOBA adjacent, where there are abilities that you need these keys to do other things, like for example Overwatch or Marvel Rivals, you use WASD and then your abilities are on like Q, E, R, F, mouse buttons, things like that. And there are more things in League, like for example you've got more abilities in League usually than in those games. So that makes things a little bit more complicated because you're going to have to find some keys to shift these things to. So you're losing A for attack move, you're losing D for summoner spell, right? You're using W for an ability, so all three of those have to move somewhere else. And since you're trading that 4 keys for 1 mouse key, it's very difficult to find keys to move these two, unfortunately. It is a little bit impractical, honestly, in terms of finding the keys to move it to. However, let me just say, like everyone has probably said, WASD for movement in MOBAs is broken because you can... The reason why in those other games it's not such a big deal is because in CSGO, PUBG, Call of Duty, you're not dodging, even Fortnite, you're not dodging bullets. It's not really possible. I mean, you can do some strafing, but it's not going to be that big of a deal because strafing is going to decrease your accuracy, more or less. I mean, obviously, if you know FPS at a high level, if you're strafing back and forth, you can stop, and at the tail ends of your strafe, when you're furthest right or furthest left, you stop, your movement ceases, and then you do have accuracy again. But you're not really dodging a whole lot of bullets like the Matrix by using WASD to move in those games. So it doesn't really affect your ability to hit somebody in an insane way because they can use WASD to move. It just makes sense in those games because you're not dodging in the same way that you do in League. In games like Overwatch or Marvel Rivals, where there are abilities, there is a difference there as well compared to League, which is you're in a 3D environment where you have to aim your abilities because of the 3D environment in a little bit of a different way. So people can move vertically and things like that as well. And I would say in general, the abilities, because you're fighting usually at further real distances effectively, and because of verticality and things like that, I would say most abilities tend to be bigger. And so even if you can use WASD to move, you're going to still not be as likely to be able to dodge with WASD. Another thing is missile speed. Missile speed in games like Overwatch or Marvel Rivals is much faster than in League. It feels like you're not going to dodge abilities in Marvel Rivals because you're able to use WASD. I mean, you can dodge some, but it's not impossible to hit somebody in Marvel Rivals or Overwatch because the abilities are faster to compensate for WASD being in the game. The issue with League specifically, or with any MOBA in general having WASD, is that the speed of abilities and the lack of verticality makes it difficult, I would say, to hit skill shots, especially on someone who can instantly change the direction that they're moving in. So the skill right now as well that comes from being able to move the direction your champion is moving in a split second to react to, predict, or dodge an ability is something that people have been training for 15 years. And it is very high level. It is very hard to do well. And there are players, the best players in the world at a professional level, who are as good as they are because of that. I mean, there are other reasons why they're good, or some players have other things that they're good at on top of that. Certainly, you would hope that from being at the top, they've learned lots of other things that give them a huge edge as well. But at the end of the day, that mechanical skill is extremely important in defining what is a good player and what is a bad player in League, is your movement. We actually were just putting out a bunch of videos about how important it was to move between your auto attacks as quickly as possible. And even, I think I haven't done this one yet, but even just how to move in general and where your cursor placement should be is all very high level stuff that people are paying more and more attention to, because it's obviously one of the biggest things that separates great players from your average solo queue player. And that skill will effectively be removed from the game because using WASD is simply better than using your mouse to move. You don't have to take the time to move your mouse from one side of your character to the other and click. It's just you click that you want to go the other direction. You just click A if you were going to the right with D, and all of a sudden you're moving back the other direction. It makes it extremely difficult to hit someone. I worry that if they introduce WASD to the game, that they will have to compensate by buffing the speed at which every single skill shot in the game is fired by increasing them all by a fixed percentage. And if they do something like that, that is not only going to fundamentally change League of Legends entirely, but anyone who's still using mouse or who thinks that you should just continue to use mouse after this is implemented in the game is completely delusional. This is like if the game had been on lock screen for 15 years and now they're allowing you to move your camera around. There are going to be people who are saying, yeah, but I've been doing it this way for so long. I don't want to adapt to this. League has always changed dramatically. And the players who have stayed the best and stayed at the top have always been the players that were willing to and able to adapt as quickly as possible. And even for a solo queue player, if you want to reach your ranked goals, if you want to get higher rank, if you want to be the best that you can at the game, you absolutely are going to have to adapt to this change. So unfortunately, the reality is that this makes dodging skill shots way easier, and it makes kiting way easier. Because again, like we talked about in the auto attacking video, you have to have this precise timing that's very difficult, because when you go to auto attack, your cursor is essentially out of place, which is why people use attack move to compensate. But even if you use attack move, a lot of people use attack move incorrectly by moving their cursor out in front of them anyways. So to compensate and move your character in a direction really quickly to dodge something after you auto attack takes a lot of skill, because your cursor control has to be very precise, and you have to be able to react or predict really quickly what's going to happen to bring your cursor from all the way out in front of your champion to click to attack somebody all the way to back to your side to move side to side. And even if your cursor is close to your champion, like it should be most of the time, right on top of yourself, so that you can kind of stutter back and forth really quickly with a very small movement of your mouse, even if it's there, it still takes a lot of skill to be able to move left and right much quicker than the average player. So rather than, once every, like at this kind of pace, you're slowly wiggling back and forth, you're, at a high level, you're like this. And that takes a lot of skill. Now, one cool thing I will say about WASD or WASD that I kind of am looking forward to, even though I hate the change, is carpal tunnel is a really big problem for a lot of league players and a lot of professional or high-level league players or streamers. And the fact that you're going to be able to use WASD and not have to spam click your mouse could be actually gigantic for literal health of the players and player longevity in careers, which could even make competitive play more interesting if people are not getting forced out because of carpal tunnel and things like that. I'm honestly worried that I have some signs that I might be starting to get. I don't have carpal tunnel, but I have some signs that I might be starting to get something like carpal tunnel. I've been playing League since Season 2, Season 3, and I play a lot. There are a lot of people who have been playing League for a long time who have carpal tunnel or are going to develop carpal tunnel if they keep playing. And if you want the game to be a generational game that lasts for many, many decades, you can't have your players... It's actually crazy. I mean, it sounds dumb to say, but it's not like as traumatic as the brain injuries that you get playing football or something like that. But it's true that like as a high level esports player, you could probably only play for like maybe, I mean, it depends on the person, right? And it depends on how much you've used your wrist beforehand and how long you're playing at a high level and stuff like that. But I think legitimately, with how fast you have to click right now, keep in mind that if you had been a professional player from Season 1 until Season 15 or something, and I don't even think anyone has, but if you had been, even if you had been a professional player for the past 15 years, you actually had the advantage Season 1 through Season 15 of not having to click as fast and as much in Season 1, 2, 3. Like it slowly ramped up. So your hand was actually safe and, well, not safe, but your hand was less strained than a player who's, let's say, a professional from Season 15 to Season 30, same 15 years, but the clicking speed is so much faster that your hand is just doomed. I think that physically you cannot play a game like League for more than like 15 years without almost being guaranteed to develop carpal tunnel. So it's an interesting angle that nobody's brought up. I think that as we get older, as the League players are getting older, one thing that's super underappreciated about WASD, although it's broken and a terrible idea, is that it will prevent us from getting carpal tunnel. And so it is actually a much healthier control scheme for the game. And if it allows esports players to have a 10, 15 year long career, instead of, maybe getting carpal tunnel and then not being able to play anymore, having wrist injuries and things like that and retiring, that could actually make esports more entertaining to see the same personalities last longer as well. So that's a totally underrated, unmentioned thing about WASD. But the main issue is that at the end of the day, it's one of the biggest changes League will ever see, because we're talking about really changing the game as it is. There's not much more fundamental than clicking with your mouse to move that defines League of Legends and skill in League of Legends. So taking that away or shifting it to WASD is going to be a crazy change. And that's all, I'll let them say their thing, but it is a crazy change. And you're delusional if you think that you're going to be able to get away with continuing to use your mouse. WASD is just going to be completely broken because the speed at which you can move from, you're moving right and all of a sudden you're moving left is instant. It just takes the click of one key compared to having to move your cursor to the other side and then right click, which takes much longer. So it's essentially like being able to smart cast your movement instead of, anyone who's continuing to use their mouse to move, it's going to be like you're like normal casting your movement. It's going to be terrible compared to that. And so it's going to completely shake up high elo League. and it's going to be really bad when it first releases too, because no one's going to know how to use it, and the game quality for a little while until people get used to it and start getting good with it, the game quality is going to be like the movement quality for the first couple of weeks that it's out in ranked is going to be so low quality. And there's no way that people are going to stop playing ranked for 2 months and go play it on PBE the entire time and then go play it in normals. And they're like, okay, now the real ranked season's starting. I'm going to play WASD. I don't think anybody's going to do that. And to make matters worse, maybe people would do that. I should bring this up. I've been wanting to talk about, I have it written down as a video topic idea, the effect of removing preseason from the game, which has been another huge change that's kind of got mixed results. One thing that would be really nice about having a preseason is that a preseason would provide an opportunity where ranked, it can be played in ranked, but ranked sort of, it matters for your MMR, but it sort of doesn't matter. It's like a practice environment for everybody. It would be really healthy for the game this year to have, even if it's not a full long 3-month preseason, it would be very healthy for WASD to come out in like December to January and there to be like a 1-month preseason at least in ranked for people to try this and learn it together so that it's not a complete debacle, because if this goes live at like in December, there's no preseason, and the last month of the ranked season when everyone's fighting for their rank and trying to get to their peak rank and stuff like that for the end of the year, people are going to be learning WASD and ruining all the games, and it's going to be terrible. So I hope that the timeline is at least release it at the start of next season so that the start of next season is a mess, but it's not affecting the end of the season. I mean, that has its problems too. I mean, people are very competitive about the start of the season as well. Maybe even as much or more so than the end. But yeah, it's going to be a wild one. So let's listen to what they say.
Producer for WASD.
And I'm Dean, the designer for WASD.
We've been working on WASD for a while now, and we want to get it in your hands to test. Ultimately, our goal with WASD is to make playing League more intuitive for first-time players or those returning, without changing what makes League, League. That said, we're longtime League players ourselves and have been using point and click for years. So we've been working hard to ensure that both control schemes feel great across all ranks, champions, and modes.
In order to make sure that's true, we've been gathering tons of feedback from our...
I think it's fine. It's weird that she said point and click because you're still pointing and click to shoot abilities, right? You're still doing that. So it's weird that she is like the head of this team. I mean, look, we all misspeak. I misspeak all the time. But it's weird that she conflates pointing and clicking with WASD movement, because WASD movement doesn't have anything to do with pointing and clicking. You don't really point and click to move. When we say point and click, we're talking about throwing an ability by aiming, and that aiming scheme is still the same. So to get into the details of it, obviously you would move with WASD, it would just replace your right click, but you're still moving your cursor to do things like move the camera around and as well as aim your skill shots and things like that. So if you're not familiar or it's not intuitive to you how that would work, you're still pointing to click to aim. It's just weird to me that someone who would be like leading this project or a spokesperson for it wouldn't understand the difference between those two things is concerning already to me.
Internal playtest team from brand new players and from pro players at MSI. And now we're ready to get even more feedback from all of you. WASD is going to come to PBE in the next few patches, and it'll stay there for an extended run.
The other thing I'll say, like they said they had pro players test it and stuff like that at MSI. Great. I'm sure that a lot of them said this is a dangerous idea. But one thing that could be really cool about it is you are able to, in some ways, right, if we want League of Legends gameplay itself to become elevated, like you want to be able to make more crazy plays, if you want to have more ability to have like crazy agency and carry because you're so much better than everyone else. In theory, being able to dodge skill shots and stuff like that and have insanely higher skill ceiling on your movement is actually something that WASD can also help with. So if we think that it's going to be broken, then the other piece of that is it allows us to have a higher skill ceiling in League than we would ever achieve by being able to move with right-clicking. And so if there's a higher skill ceiling for it, which is why it's broken, that's going to progress the game forward in a way that could actually be really cool, because it could actually allow players to play at a level that we never thought was humanly possible. And so we'd be able to see some really cool professional games and some really cool moments and stuff like that, or even pull off some of those moments ourselves in solo queue that would feel really amazing. On the other hand, again, what does this do to game balance? Because on the other side of that is, if you're able to pull off those moments because you're able to dodge all these abilities and stuff like that, well, what happens when you're throwing abilities? Now throwing abilities is even worse and feels even less satisfying. And point and click or targeted CC becomes so much stronger. And we've already seen that as League players have gotten better over the years at moving, a lot of old champions have crept back into the meta because they still have point and click CC. So all of a sudden, you've probably seen this the last couple of years, champions like Vi, a lot of older champions that have guaranteed point and click CC or some form of guaranteed CC have become much stronger because of the fact that their CC is guaranteed, and players are so good at moving that the only way against really good players to kind of lock them down is with this guaranteed free CC. And the free guaranteed CC, even just one, makes all of your other CC that you have that's not guaranteed, it makes it guaranteed if you're at a high level. Because if you're able to, I talked about this in the patch notes with Morgana, right? So let's say that you have a CC that can, on your team, like a Viol, that could set up a Morgana queue, or something else that's easier to hit, or point and click that could set up Morgana. Because the enemy team is being CC'd a lot, now Morgana is able to pile on as a secondary CC and guarantee that that person's CC'd for a really long time. All of a sudden, Morgana is actually a pretty decent champion, if you consider that. It's that sort of thing. So you're going to make champions that carry those things in their kit way, way stronger. And so there is going to be this is one of those changes to League that's going to require a lot of follow-up balancing adjustments to the entire game, every champion in the game, maybe even items and stuff like that, to adjust for what they allowed players to do. So it's going to be wild. Okay, what do they say?
A slower than usual rollout where we'll start on PvE, we'll move to unranked queues.
So they want a slower than usual rollout, and they've talked to players and stuff like that, but there's no nerfing WASD, right? I mean, you could in theory, but it'd be really weird. I mean, you could make the champion's movement speed 5 lower if you're on WASD or something like that. But that's just not something. I think that's such a weird counterintuitive thing to have exist in the game that I don't think Riot would go for that ever, and I don't think that they should. So you can do a slower rollout to help with the bugs that they're going to talk about. But at the end of the day, you can roll it out slow or fast. It's not going to change, and there's no feedback that you can get that is going to change how good or bad WASD is. Because you're not going to be able to do something to tune WASD down in strength before it releases. It's not like a new rune where you can, adjust the numbers down a little bit if it's too strong. It just either is in the game and it's way too strong and everyone has to use it unless you're at a low level or you don't care about your rank where it doesn't really matter that much, or you have to not add it to the game. That's all that there is to it. If they feel like this is a change that is absolutely necessary to make League stand out from other MOBAs, attract and keep new players because the control scheme is the same as every other PC game instead of different, and it can attract, in NA in particular, right? We've been talking about NA is dying. There are a lot of players in NA when it comes to PC games and video games in general who play shooters. And again, in shooters like Call of Duty, PUBG, CSGO, these are very popular games in NA. WASD is how you move. And so coming to a game like League that's so different, having that control scheme the same will actually translate to new players being retained. I agree with that. But I worry about how many new players it's going to cause to come to the game, and or they're going to retain when they do decide to try the game independently of the WASD thing. It's probably not going to be that many, and the disruption that it's going to cause in high elo, whereas like a lot of other things you could do to recruit new players and retain and keep new players don't affect high elo, whereas this sort of change is like one of the most massive changes that high elo or League in general has seen ever. So the impact in order to try to get those new players in on the rest of the community that's been playing League for 15 years, there's never been anything like it that's this big of an impact on the existing players. So I just want to list a couple of things again real quickly that I think Riot should be doing for new players. Some of them I've already mentioned, but I'll start with a couple of new ones that I thought, because I actually just spent a day leveling like 2 levels on a unranked account. And I was playing with my wife, and my baby's playing Yuumi. 10 months old, played his first Yuumi game. It's a mad dash. I mean, don't ask me how we did that. We bound all of his keys to random stuff, so it's like he's doing something. If he's smashing the keyboard, I'm like running over there to move him sometimes so he doesn't get an AFK warning. We're playing intermediate bot games and we're winning 100% of them. But, you know, it's an interesting process. We're level 7. We're seeing what we can do with it. But anyways, so I actually had the experience of, you know, working on these accounts the other day, and there is still no jungle tutorial. And I thought about this the other day when we were talking about queue times. It's like jungle and support are like the least popular roles, right? They're the ones that are causing these queue time bottlenecks and autofilling and all this stuff. Do you think that if there was a tutorial for jungle, more people might play jungle when they start playing League? Do you think that if you gave people smite and access to all of the summoner spells at level 1, they might actually play jungle from the beginning? Because here's the thing. I gave this story the other day when I was talking about my experience, very first days playing League. I played Ashe during the tutorial because at that time you only played Ashe during the tutorial. You didn't have the option to choose like 5 or 6 different champions to start out with, like where you could, you know, in the tutorial nowadays you can like click on a new champion to try or whatever. You just played Ashe during the tutorial. So when I got into normal games, I was already taking the game seriously enough that I didn't want to play a champion other than Ashe, not because I necessarily liked Ashe or I knew that I liked her better than the other champions, but I liked her well enough and I didn't know any of the other champions and I wanted to get in there and start winning some games. So when I started playing, for a while, I refused to play anything but Ashe because that was what I played during the tutorial. So when in the tutorial, you don't really get to play jungle, and there's no tutorial that teaches you how to play jungle, and you don't even unlock smite. I don't know what level, but you don't get all the summoner spells. You don't even get flash, which, you know, so you don't get proper summoner spells at all. It teaches you the game with the wrong summoner spells. It teaches you the game with like ghost heal, right, for the longest time. Think about how much better new players' experience would be if they could flash out of turrets when they realize they're getting bopped by the turret. New players wouldn't be dying to the turret all the time and as frustrated about their experience starting out and how hard it is. Because one of the hardest things we all know is you're a new player and the turrets start absolutely bopping you. Well, if you had flash, like everyone always does anyways, then you wouldn't have as bad of a time with turrets. And so you might take that frustration and reduce it from new players' experience. You might get, if you need more people to main jungle, don't just make jungle OP in order to get more people to play it in ranked. How about getting new players interested in playing jungle by letting them play a jungle tutorial or by giving them access to smite? The other thing that new players still don't have is they don't get access to their runes like the summoner spells. They don't get access to all of the rune choices until they get to a certain level. So you have and it's not even like you get like the recommended runes that you would get even in like ranked today or something like that. You just get like one terrible guardian page. So you get to choose like, I think the keystone. So you choose like, let's say guardian for Braum. And then it gives you all of the other runes, all of the 3 minor runes in your main tree, and all of your secondary runes, and all of your stat runes, all filled out for you, unchangeable, only one option for every champion that goes Guardian. This is just terrible, right? Because obviously you're playing and learning with the wrong runes, with no jungle tutorial, and with the wrong summoner spells and no ability to jungle at all because you don't unlock Smite until a certain level. So of course less people play jungle because they don't even get to start to play jungle until they're maybe like level 10 to 14 or something like that. So it doesn't make any sense. So when you can make simple changes like that first, and these are the new things I thought of, old things that I've already mentioned before are that new players are going to want to find their role and their champion as soon as possible, and we want them to find their role and their champion as soon as possible because there's so many champions in League, nearly 170 now, that it would take you too many games to try them all, right? So let's say your favorite champion in the game is going to be Urgot, but you have no idea that it's going to be Urgot when you start playing League. A lot of players will end up quitting, I would imagine, before they ever find the champion that they really like the most, or before they find a champion that they like enough that's close enough to their main champion that they stick around for longer and then transition to playing the champion they end up liking. So the goal is to get a player onto their role that they enjoy playing and onto a champion in their role that they at least like enough to keep them playing long enough to find the champion that they actually like the most. Once they found the champion that they love the most in the game, they're likely to stick around for a long time. So when it comes to player retention, giving players access to champions, allowing them to try the champions, giving them better descriptions of what the champions do and look like and all this stuff, and all of that is super important. So why can you not try every champion for free in Practice Tool to test whether you want to buy the champion or not with your hard-earned blue essence? Why are the champions so expensive and it takes you so long to unlock all of the champions? Now, luckily, they did take that suggestion, and right, we know that they reduced the blue essence cost of all the champions in the game by 50%, which was a huge win and a huge deal. But honestly, again, they could still literally just make all of the champions free so that people have the ability to try them, and then that negates the whole Practice Tool thing. But I think that there is some level of progression of unlocking and picking the champions, etc., etc. But basically, the idea here is you want to get them onto their main role and main champion as soon as possible. So I think that there should be some sort of survey kind of built into the tutorial. I mean, it doesn't need to be this big formal survey, but kind of a fun questionnaire that you fill out that figures out what role you're most likely to play and gives you some suggestions of some champions that you'd like to play in that role that fit your style. So here's just an example. You might get, as part of the tutorial, a thing that says, maybe after you've completed the first 3 tutorials, maybe when you first start, you might get a thing that says, here's a description of all the roles in the game. Top lane is an isolated 1v1 lane with bruisers, tanks, and some range champions. But mostly bruisers and tanks, right? Jungle is a strategic role that gets to move between the lanes and control the map to create numbers advantages for their team. It's like the strategic captain of the team, right? Mid lane is at the center of the map, focuses on mages. I didn't really talk about what champion classes for jungle. Usually fighters, tanks, and some AP champions, right? Or some, you would call them for new players, like magic damage champion, mages, something like that. For mid lane, you have a lane that's at the center of the map, focused on wave clear and being able to roam and impact other lanes, and is primarily made up of mages and assassins and things like that. Then you have AD carry, which is like the mechanical damage per second like DPS carry role that is going to carry your team through team fights, that is weaker early but scales and becomes, you know, stronger than the other champions in the game later on, Kappa, and, you know, is gold reliant and things like that. And it's mostly made up of ranged carry marksman champions and some mages or something like that. Don't even mention the mages, just say ranged AD carry champions. Then you have support, and support is, you know, part of that 2v2 lane with the AD carry, and a support's job is to protect the AD carry in lane and lane with a partner 2v2, but also roam around the map and help the team, you know, strategically win the game and control vision and stuff like that. And you give them this, you know, and then of course in support you have like enchanters, tank engaged supports, and poke champions. So you give them these brief descriptions. You know, it's one picture that you have to put up that has, you know, you can cut that description down. You have a brief description of all of the roles. And then they select, this is the role I think I'm most likely to like, or maybe here are 2 roles that I kind of like, or I'm between, or, you know, maybe you could even rank them in order of which ones you would like the most. Then you get, you know, a question about what type of class do you think you're likely to play, you know, in that role. And maybe you hit I'm unsure, or you hit, you know, I'd like to play, I'll use support as an example, right? I'd like to play tank engaged supports. Well, if you hit I'd like to play tank engaged supports, it might give you the opportunity to unlock, here are the 3 most popular tank supports right now, tank engaged supports right now. You get to unlock these 3 champions for free and try them out, and we think that you're likely to like these champions. Or you say I'm unsure, and it gives you, here's the most popular poke support, here's the most popular enchanter support, here's the most popular tank engaged support. You know, here are these 3 champions for free. This one is a poke support, this one's an enchanter, this one's a you know, a tank engaged support. Here's what the differences between those are. You know, you can either go back and maybe you only want to do tank engaged supports, or you can select this group and you can try one of each and see what you like the most and kind of find your role within the role. Obviously not fully fleshed out. I don't know exactly what the language would be, but something simple like this would take 2 minutes, give people a couple of champions for free to get started with, would be infinitely better than I mean, you do both, but it would be infinitely better than like giving people a choice between like Riven, Alawi, and what is it, like Garen or something like that when you hit like level 7. It's like, okay, but I don't even play top lane. So this is like, it's clearly not even attempting to cater to what I'm looking for. So all of the sudden what you could do is you could take someone and you could kind of push them on a path based on what they're likely to like. And obviously Riot, with a lot of data and stuff like that, could do an even better job of matching people directly with maybe a more specific champion rather than 3 generic popular champions. Maybe you ask them some literal personality questions, or you show them some options of and a deeper description of like, okay, here are 10 tank engaged support champions. This one's like this one's like this. You get a couple sentence description. Which one do you think you'd be the most interested in? And it just funnels you into, it just, you know, decision tree funnels you into, we think you'd like this. Maybe you don't end up sticking with it. Maybe you just try it, but you're much more likely to have a better experience playing the game by having a automatic system in place. Like maybe your friend would help you with this normally if you were starting League with a friend, but if you're not starting League with a friend, or your friend's trolling you like my friends did, and they're telling you to build 6 Doran shields and they're not any help at picking a role or a champion, then you know, what you do is you have a built-in system to help people who are playing by themselves and want to get into the game, or people whose friends aren't all that helpful or knowledgeable about the game, to be able to get into the game and have a better experience faster. These things are going to be as impactful, maybe less impactful as WASD, but they're going to be very, very large impact with no negative impact to the rest of the players who've been playing the game for 15 years at all. So in my mind, it doesn't make sense to implement WASD in the game as a way to attract new players when we don't even have a jungle tutorial and don't let you get smite until like level 10. I mean, don't quote me on that. Maybe you get smite at level 4 or something and you complete the tutorial, you're level 3. Let's just look that up real quick as a sticking point. What level do you unlock smite at League? Okay, this says, the AI could be wrong. This says you get it at level 3, which is literally as soon as you complete the tutorial. So I think I'm a little bit wrong when it comes to my point about smite. However, the point about there not being a jungle tutorial still stands, which is if you're never playing the tutorial with the summoner spell smite, and there's no tutorial for jungle, you're not likely to decide, okay, I have this weird smite summoner spell unlocked. I have no idea what to do with it or what role it's associated with. I guess I'll just go jungle with smite, right? Nobody's doing that. That's why you have less junglers, or a big reason why you have less junglers. So if they would just simply have a tutorial, right? And that's true over the years, right? Over the last 15 years, one of the reasons why we have less junglers is because there aren't as many people willing to take that leap and jump into a role that they know nothing about randomly without the game pushing them into it at all, because of that. And, so anyways, you get the idea. So even if you get smite fairly early on, it still doesn't make sense that you don't have flash. It still doesn't make sense that you get the other summoner spells later. The point is that the entire game should be unlocked and accessible for people as early on as possible, and they should be funneled into a champion or a role that they're likely to love, so that they stick around in the game longer. And until changes like that, or there should be also a jungle tutorial to teach people how to play jungle, since Riot wants more people in the role anyways, until changes like that are easy to make, have zero impact on high elo and people who've been playing for 15 years, even high elo or not, that is not disruptive to the game for everybody else, those changes, it seems like logically to me, should be made first, and then WASD could be implemented on top of that to boost engagement or, whatever. But to focus on WASD first just seems like a misallocation of resources, let's say, or the wrong order of priority. On top of that, I worry that without jungle tutorial, without a good, even though they had sort of updated the tutorial a little bit, it still doesn't teach you anything about objectives. It doesn't really teach you about so many things. I mean, there's so many things wrong with the tutorial. It doesn't really teach you a lot. It basically just teaches you push turrets and inhibitors, and it doesn't really teach you any gameplay elements whatsoever. I'm not 100% sure on this because now they've added that new thing where you can hover over the champions and see their abilities, but I'm not sure. Let me actually look right now on the client. I'm not sure that there is a way to see champions' abilities in depth in the client. But let me take a look at this. Yeah. Okay, so let me show you, for example, right? So let's say that I was learning Braum or learning the game in general. When I went to Marvel Rivals, actually, and Overwatch and stuff like that, one of the first things I did with Marvel Rivals, because I'm at a high level with League and I know how to approach these games now. So when I got into Marvel Rivals, before I played any games, I sat there and I read what all the abilities were for the 30 different champions that there were, because I knew that would make me a lot better at the game. With League, you have to go through this convoluted thing where you go to this, nameless bag icon up here, which takes you to champions. And then if you own the champion, I guess you can see champions you don't own. Obviously, I don't not own any champions. I own all the champions, so we're not going to see what that looks like. I'm not sure if you would have to go through the shop or you'd uncheck show unowned, and I'm sure you can still look at their abilities. Probably, hopefully that's functional. But you go here, right, and this is the description of Braum Q. Braum propels freezing ice from his shield, slowing and dealing magic damage, applies a stack of concussive blows, which is the passive, right? You get one of the most basic descriptions. I mean, it's honestly better than it used to be, but because to some degree there's an argument that you actually want these to be simplified, especially for new players who are reading them. But there is a lot of information that I think gets left out of these, including every number about how effective it is and how much it is. But there's a lot of information that gets left out of these. So what I'm getting at here is that there's so many things that you can do for new players to teach new players the game and funnel them into roles that aren't popular without doing the WASD thing. And worse than that, if you implement the WASD thing and then it causes a big influx of people to come and try League for the first time, and you really want those people to stick around, that's why you want to have both at the same time, or the other changes earlier. Because if you don't have that funneling people into a champion that they're likely to enjoy very early on, you don't have a good way to learn the abilities, and you don't have a jungle tutorial, you don't unlock all of the rune options, and you don't unlock all the summoner spells that you need. What ends up happening is you're going to bring all these people to try League with the WASD change, and you're not going to be ready to have the best chance of retaining as many of those players as possible, because you haven't if they make this WASD change and they bring it out and then 100,000 new players try the game and 10% less of them stick around because there was no jungle tutorial and the rune system sucks at early levels and the summoner spell system sucks at early levels and not having flash and all of these things that we've talked about, then that's going to be a major loss for no reason. So another thing that I think is frustrating is why not implement the changes that you could make to retain new players better that don't impact all the other players who've been playing the game for a long time first, then do the WASD change. On top of that, if you do that first, then when the WASD change comes through, you retain as many of those players in that influx as possible, instead of bringing them all in. They're disappointed by the game and they quit because it's not as well set up and the tutorial is not as well set up as it could be, and the new player experience isn't as well set up as it could be. They have done some things, right? I'm pretty sure that champion description thing with the abilities wasn't as clean. In the past, even just within the past couple of years, I don't know when exactly they kind of fixed that up a little bit. They've done things like reduce the champion cost by half of its blue essence. They give a lot more champions away every time you level up. You kind of get a selection of champions to pick from when you're leveling up, and that's really nice because it does mean that you can unlock more champions faster and easier. The battle passes even give people access to a lot more champions and skins and stuff like that when they're starting out that can keep them interested in playing. There is something to be said about the progression of getting to try one champion at a time. If you have all of the champions unlocked for free automatically, you don't get people who get caught up in kind of somewhat being addicted to or enjoying the process of unlocking all the champions and the achievement that comes from unlocking all the champions. When you're a new player to the game, you want sort of a competitive experience and you want some goals to achieve, but you're not about to be the next Faker, your first week into League. But you might unlock 10 champions and, or you might have a goal to unlock all of the champions in your role, or you might have a goal to unlock all the champions in the game. And unlocking all the champions in the game might be a year or 2 long year goal for a new player that's actually engaging and part of the process. And that's okay. So I'm not necessarily saying that the champions should all be free. I think that change could actually be a mixed bag, but because there is some progression to that. But for the champions that you are going to give away for free, rather than, as I said, you hit level 7, you get a Lowy, Garen, and Riven, even though you have done nothing to indicate that you're a top lane player, you've never played top lane in any of your games, right? You're clearly trending in one direction. Giving people options from things that are relevant to them and their role and the type of champion that they're playing, to basically push them into finding the champion that's right for them, or maybe something that's in their role, but they're playing enchanters and maybe maybe they'd actually be more interested in engage support. So you give them 2 enchanters and 1 engage support to try to nudge them into trying an engage support. And maybe they don't like it, and then they go back to trying the enchanters that they've unlocked or whatever. But whatever the case is, you want a balance between that. So you want to be able to like play a couple of games, unlock a new champion. But you don't want to have to play like 10, 20 games before you get access to a new champion, because if you have to play 10 or 20 games as a new player before you get access to try a singular new champion, you might end up quitting because you're stuck on a champion for 10 or 20 games that you don't really enjoy all that much, and it's just too long of a process and too much of a grind to buy a new champion. So I think the sweet spot is like 3 games, could get you a new champion or something like that. Maybe 5 games max or something like that. But, so that you're always unlocking a new champion, having something new to try that keeps you interested and engaged in the game. You're feeling like you're getting the achievement of unlocking a champion, but you're not having to wait 5+ games, 10 or 20 games to unlock a champion, and then because you're not that interested in the champions that you have unlocked right now, you quit 10, 15 games in, a couple of games away from unlocking your next champion, because it feels like it's too slow of a process and you're not finding the champion that you enjoy playing, or you're not enjoying the game, and so you're not going to continue sinking another 20, 40 hours into the game as a new player just to try 2 new champions and you're not even sure what you're looking for. So you get the point. There's a lot of things that they can do for new players aside from this, so I don't know why this is the first thing that they're hitting right now, but I'll let them continue again.
And eventually into ranked. Our goal is to make sure we have the time to gather feedback and act on it before a full release.
We're rolling it out this way because we want to make sure that we can catch any bugs, unintended interactions, and to ensure that your ranked games aren't disrupted by someone WASDing into walls.
See, this is just dumb because I guess there's nothing that they can do about the fact that people won't play PvE in normal games, other than, like I said, if they did like a preseason and force people to, well, it wouldn't be normal games. It would still be ranked, but basically force a time period where ranked doesn't matter as much. I mean, I've always been a big advocate that preseason matters, but like I said, the slow rollout, number 1, is only for bugs, like they said, because you're not going to be able to make adjustments to WASD. It either exists or it doesn't. Number 2, you're going to have people WASDing into walls in their ranked games playing it for the first time, because a lot of players, especially in ranked, especially in the highest elos in the game, are ranked only players, myself included. I mean, for the most part. Every once in a while, of course, you'll play. I probably play literally a normal game like maybe once a month. Like I'll sit down, maybe 1 session of normal game, maybe 2 or 3 normal games or something like that. So the past couple of years, I barely ever play any normal games. Maybe a couple ARAM games a month. Maybe, an average of 1 to 3 ARAM games a month or something like that over the last years. But the reality is that there's a lot of ranked only players. And it's just, people are going to do it no matter how fast or slow you roll it out. So when they do this assurance that people aren't going to be, we're doing it slow so people won't WASD into walls in your ranked game, it comes across, it rubs me the wrong way, because they got to know that that's not the case, right? Like, yes, you're rolling it out slow. Yes, that's the best that you can do. But you're lying if you say that people aren't going to do that and try that for the first time in ranked, because they're ranked only players that aren't going to play this on PvE and aren't going to play it in normal games, especially because there's no preseason and ranks up the entire time. So why would they choose to go play normal games over ranked? Just to learn WASD a little bit earlier, when everyone's going to have to learn WASD eventually and have a chance to do that in ranked anyways. So unless you force some sort of preseason with it in ranked, nobody's going to learn this, in ranked games that matter a lot, or nobody's going to learn this in normal games or ranked games that don't matter that much. Everyone's going to be learning this for the first time. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people are going to be learning this and trying this for the first time in ranked games that matter, probably at the end or the beginning of the season with the timeline that we're looking at, because we got 4 months. We got about 4 months exactly until the new season ranked reset starts. In January, probably right around January 9th to the 13th. We're at the 13th today. So yeah, people are, it sounds like with the slow rollout on PBE and stuff like that, that's going to be coming out either right at the start of the new season or right at the end of the season, and it's the worst possible time. I think maybe arguably, like I said, the start of the season is not a crazy bad time to do it because that's when they make large changes to the game, so at least it's somewhat expected that at the start of a new season you have to adapt to a lot of change to the game, and that the game quality already kind of goes down a lot when people get ranked reset because there's a mix of, it's a soft reset, but there's still a wider variance. We've talked about this before. There's, a wider variance of players being forced to play together, even though you sort of mostly play with the same people. You get a wider variance of people that you're playing with. I don't want to get into all of that, otherwise it's going to turn into a 3-hour video. But yeah, the start of the season may be the best time to do it, but there's no preseason anymore, so you got all of that. There's so many things that they're saying here that are kind of missing the mark.
Discovered and resolved a lot of edge case scenarios while in development, so we're hopeful we got rid of the most atrocious bugs. One of the earliest bugs led to a few playtests where Nunu could do this sick 180 instantly while snowballing, and that unlocked a new fear for many of us.
So they're saying they're already catching some bugs. Obviously, the slow rollout is going to help catch the bugs. Thing is that like anytime you make any major changes to the game, you're probably going to break a few things and cause some bugs. I imagine that there will be bugs even after long extensive testing, and players are more incentivized to test this change than ever before, because some players, not a ton, but some players are going to legitimately want to get ahead of the curve and learn this as early as possible if they feel like it's super fundamental to them playing the game moving forward. So there are going to be a lot of people who are tryharding and trying to, learn this as much as they can in normals and then take it into ranked and start popping off. But, so they will have more data than a lot of changes they've had in the past, even for a slow rollout. There are going to be a lot of bugs as a result of this as well. I think that that's okay. That's just an inevitability of a large change, and they'll be fixed eventually. But yes, it will also not only break the game in terms of the gameplay mechanic for moving, but also in terms of the bugs that it's going to cause along the way, even if they do a slow rollout. So that's just another small issue with it.
Now, let's talk about balance. Our goal is to make sure WASD...
I've been talking about the balance of it for the last hour.
...is an awesome way to play League for the players who want it, but no one should feel forced to switch control schemes just to stay competitive.
Yeah, I hate this statement because if their philosophy is no one should feel forced to change control schemes to stay competitive, then they shouldn't be necessarily implementing WASD, or they should come up with some weird convoluted way to make you nerfed if you're using WASD or make WASD weaker somehow. But I don't think that makes a lot of sense, and it's super counterintuitive. Like I said, like taking movement speed away from people who are using WASD is just so weird. And what are you gonna not be allowed to change your setting mid game? There's so many weird things that come with that. So I don't think they should do that. But you cannot. Maybe Riot has a hard time with this, or they're trying to please everyone and make everybody happy, and you can't always do that. Sometimes you have situations. It reminds me of the queue time situation. You have a situation where you have two groups of people who want two very different things, right? You have, in the queue time situation, you have players who want fast queue times, and that's all they care about. They don't care about the game quality being that high. So, and they even maybe think that players should be capable of playing multiple roles and more champions, because it makes sure that players at the top of the game are actually good at the game rather than being good at one champion or one role. At least to a little bit of a greater extent. So they would rather have autofill in the game and shorter queue times. And they think queue times are too long right now at 5 minutes in Masters. Then you have people who are like, well, I'm going to spend 30, 35 minutes in a game in Masters Plus. I've spent thousands of hours grinding to get to Masters Plus. And so I care a lot about the quality of the game and how the game goes. And so I don't want autofill to exist in the game at all, because I would rather wait 10 minutes or even 15 minutes. I've even heard somebody comment on my video that they would wait in queue as long as the game lasts in order to get a high quality game. I don't think most people agree with that, but that's how strong some people feel about it on the other side. I would rather wait 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get a high quality game than get an auto-filled game with 3 people auto-filled or whatever and it being imbalanced and an auto-filled jungler and stuff like that, in 5 minutes. I would much rather wait an extra 5 minutes to get a much higher quality game. You have 2 very different groups of people on this. You can't really please both groups unless you're able to, and I don't know whether it's technically possible, but unless, as I said, you're able to add the option of getting which one you want. Unless you're able to add the functionality of choosing whether you're okay with longer queue times or not, you simply can't please both groups of people because they want 2 separate things, and I know there's a bunch of people on one side and there's a bunch of people on the other. Same thing with WASD, except I will say no one's asking, and I've heard a lot of people commenting, no one's asking for WASD. Now, I'm sure there are some people. And obviously, new players, people who don't currently play League, probably think that WASD is maybe a good idea. Now, again, it's a gamble because how many of those people are actually going to try League because WASD gets added, or new players are going to come into League and those extra new, some extra percentage of new players, maybe an extra 10% of new players actually are retained and stick around because of WASD. I don't know what the answer to that is. So to me, it feels like, whereas with the queue time situation, there's 2 big groups of people on both sides, and I can tell that the community's split, and you can't make both happy. With the WASD thing, you also can't make both groups happy, but there's not a huge group of people asking for WASD. There's just a huge group of people who's used to there not being WASD in the game, who thinks that it's going to be super disruptive. And I haven't heard a single high elo player say that they don't think WASD is going to be broken and that people aren't going to be forced to switch to it. So I don't know what Riot's thinking on this, because if you lose a bunch of players, which could happen on the other hand, what if barely any new players come in because of WASD and 10% of the current players quit because they think that WASD being introduced to the game completely changed League of Legends? It's essentially League of Legends 2, and they're just not having it anymore. Maybe they refuse to switch over after 15 years of being stuck and used to the same movement and control scheme. They just don't want to switch over. But it's competitively necessary. So they end up demoting from Masters to, Diamond, or even maybe Emerald or something, depending on how severe it is as a requirement. I mean, you may end up with actually quite a large backlash. Also, the most vocal players in the community, of course, are going to be the players who have been playing for a long time and are very involved, whereas you're not going to hear a lot from new players. So even if the change is like neutral, if there's a lot of old players quitting the game because WASDs keep holding them back, or they refuse to switch from mouse or whatever the case may be, you're going to hear from those players. They're going to show up in YouTube comments. They're going to show up in Reddit threads and on Discord complaining about the game. You'll probably hear it in your matches. Oh, WASD abuser, or whatever. But new players, Jimmy, who's level 7, is not going to be making a post about how much he appreciates WASD being introduced to the game. So even if you see 10,000 new players come in and 10,000 old players leave, you better bet that you're going to hear way more from the 10,000 old players leaving. And maybe that's fair, because to be honest, 10,000 new players coming into the game, you don't know how long those people are going to stick around for. Whereas if you lose 10,000 players who've been playing the game for 10, 15 years, that's kind of a real tragedy in and of itself. It is a bigger loss to lose a player who's been playing and committed to the game for a long time. And competitively, it's a loss as well, because, for the competitive health and integrity of the game, because if you lose a player with 10 years of experience, that's the type of player who, at least to a certain extent, is actually, even if they suck, even if they're a diamond dog or a master monkey, they're still the type of player with 10 years of experience who's making the game better for the people that they're playing with. Whether they get flamed some games and honored and, and praised in others, the reality is that overall, someone who's been playing the game for a long time and who understands the game well is part of what makes solo queue nice for their teammates most of the time on average, is a net positive. And if you lose that person, losing someone who's a veteran of the game with 10, 15 years of experience versus gaining a player who's been playing for, 2 months instead of dropping the game after a couple of days, they're not equivalent. So if you gain a new player who's, so far has been continuing to play for 2 months, but you lose some guy who's been playing for 10 years, they're not the same. And so that vocal difference that you hear is not just a vocal difference that should be ignored or just a vocal minority that should be ignored. It's actually kind of an issue. But anyways, we'll keep going. Otherwise, they're going to turn on forever.
One thing we'll be keeping a close eye on is how WASD affects balance between moving and attacking, especially at high attack speeds. With point and click, kiting or chasing someone down while attacking takes serious precision, and WASD controls can make this a lot easier.
She's doing that thing again with point and click. I mean, I guess she's talking about, right, instead of aiming, she's talking about man, see, this is what I hate. Okay, so when you say point and click, we've been through this with the auto attacking video. At a high level, you don't point and click to auto attack. Do they even understand this? At a high level, you use attack move on the ground at your champion's feet. Unless they're in a minion wave, right? And then you use the tilde key to target champions only plus right click. Now, people don't have perfect habits, and a lot of old habits persist, but that's how you should be auto attacking. Nobody points to click to auto attack. You attack move the ground at your feet in the direction of the champion that you want to attack. So it comes across as ignorant when someone who's in charge of making sure that WASD is balanced doesn't even understand how players auto attack at a high level. Does that make sense? She's talking about we need to be extra cautious of how WASD is gonna affect people, kiting between auto attacks. I don't know how people auto attack at a high level because I think you point and right click at them. You know what I mean? That to me, it's all these, and it's not just one thing, because I know I'm being super nitpicky, but this is one of the biggest, this is one of the biggest changes that they've made to the game ever, so I have to be very nitpicky about it, because this is going to dramatically shake up the game. And I worry about the competency of the people at Riot when the people who are in charge of making sure that these things aren't issues, clearly the way they're saying things show that they don't understand. And again, maybe she just doesn't understand the terminology or something like that, but there's so many little things that they've said where they're trying to say something to reassure people, and it's just a lie. It can't be true. People won't be doing this in their ranked games for the first time. We're going to make sure that this is balanced and that you don't feel like you have to use this control scheme, which just can't be the case if you understand what the implementation of this will look like, at a high level. You've got the wrong terminology and understanding of how people go to auto attack in high elo. And so I'm very concerned that the people in charge of this just simply don't understand the game well enough to pull this off in a way that is not going to do all of the things that they're assuring us it's not going to do. It's going to cause bugs. It's going to cause everyone who wants to, remain competitively relevant to switch over to a control scheme after 15 years of learning how to use the mouse to move properly. It's going to take away the skill that a lot of players have developed over 15 years, including some of our favorite, pro 80 carries and stuff like that. It is going to make skill shots super hard to hit and unbalanced. It's going to make certain roles like 80 carry or range champions in general super unbalanced compared to other things. Now, maybe, hey, as a support player, I've been asking them to buff 80 carry. I didn't think this was the direction they were going to go. I thought they'd rework their items. But maybe this is the change that 80 carry has been needing for the past 8 years or whatever to come back into relevance. Maybe 80 carry will just become broken again because of WASD and their ability to kite. And as a support player, maybe I can go back to making sure my 80 carry is carrying the game. And maybe as a Braum player, I'm going to enjoy their ability to kite and use my passive like nothing else. Maybe Braum's going to be broken. Who knows? But yeah, I'm just concerned that they don't know what they're doing.
This is something on everyone's
As per
minds,
usual.
so we're going into PBE very aware of it, and we'll be ready to make adjustments if we need to.
See, like they say that, right? Like, so what she had just said was making sure that we're paying attention to its effect on kiting, especially at high attack speeds. And then he said, you know, when it goes into PBE, we're going to be, you know, very conscious of this and making adjustments. What do they mean by making adjustments? Because as I've said, unless you start to get really wonky and very creative, I don't think that you can adjust WASD to balance it. You cannot just like nerf WASD to make WASD a little bit weaker, right? Unless you do something really funky. Now, I haven't thought it, you know, 100% all the way through about like the wacky creative changes that you could do. Like I threw out, the one example I threw out was like maybe forcing champions base movement speed down by like 5 if you're using WASD. But there's so many problems with that, like I talked about. I'm sure people will drop in the comments. What do you think are some creative solutions they could use to... What do they mean by that? Do you think it's possible for them to nerf WASD or adjust WASD's power level down? And what would that look like? If you think it is possible to adjust WASD's power level down to make using the mouse still viable, what does that look like in a way that's a realistic change to the game that doesn't, you know, force you to have the setting locked for that game or prevent you from changing your settings or, you know, like randomly change the, you know, nerf your champion or something like that while you're playing it, which is just a weird system that shouldn't exist in League because you're supposed to be used to how, you know, I mean, that's confusing even for the person playing against it because you're supposed to be used to how fast the champion moves, how much damage it does, whatever, how much attack speed the champion can have. You can't really like nerf the champion situationally. It doesn't make any sense, right? So a change like that is not, I believe that it's a change that is fundamentally outside of the scope of what League of Legends should be balanced around, right? It's not a possible balance change. It's an illegal balance change.
WASD movement and improving the way the champion feels.
Sorry, I have to go back. What did she say?
Make adjustments if we need to.
Beyond WASD movement and improving the way the champion feels while in WASD, we feel there should be a few other things that can be improved for both control schemes. So we're making some updates to those spaces like key binding and camera. For key bindings, we're exploring a lot more finite controls for players to be able to set whatever they want. For example, we'll let you bind the left click on your mouse without having to edit your system files for the first time in League's history.
So obviously, like we said, since you're replacing your right click, which is one key to move, with 4 keys to move, WASD, you need to take, you know, 3 keys, which is the difference. You need to take 3 keys that are currently in use, and you need to either move them to places where other keys are already bound and then bump those keys further out on the keyboard to something weird, or you need to have access to maybe a more usable key like mouse buttons or like the primary mouse button, the left click. And it sounds like one of the things that they're going to do, for example, is maybe let you, if you want to, bind something like a summoner spell or an ability or something like that to your left click. The problem with that is, again, left click also does something. So maybe that is more practical or easier to use, and then you can bind what you would normally click to left click to some other random key or mouse button. But you left click to see all kinds of important information. You can use it to click on objectives to see, or camps to see how much HP they have. You can click on champions to see what buffs and debuffs are on them and things like that, and their HP and their champion stats and stuff like that, and their items and all this stuff, without having to hit tab. So you use left click for lots of things, you know, in League. It's not like it's completely useless. So if you bind, you know, an ability or something or a summoner spell to that, you're still going to have to, unfortunately, figure out another key to replace it with. So that's, you know, another interesting one, but that's fine. So obviously they're talking about that.
We're also adding a new version of locked camera called Dynamic Locked Camera. It extends your view towards your mouse, and our hope is to get the simplicity of locked camera, but with some flexibility to see more of the action when you need to.
I still think that unlocked camera, unless for some reason using WASD is going to make it difficult to move your camera for one reason or another, still having your regular unlocked camera, especially now that you actually have more freedom with your mouse can be allowed to, you know, float towards the edge of the screen, and it's not as bad. If your mouse is out at the enemy champion or something like that, it's not as bad because you're moving with WASD, so it doesn't really matter where your mouse is. Your mouse could constantly be out at the minions you're trying to last hit, or out at the edge of the screen to be bumping your camera around when you need to, or out at the enemy champion in case you decide that you want to throw a skill shot at them. So you're going to have a lot more freedom with your mouse as well, which can actually make aiming and timing and hitting things easier, and your camera control easier because you can use your mouse just to do camera control. So it's actually going to make unlocked camera even better if you're able to, the one downside I would say of unlocked camera, even though it's very, very good for the amount of information that you get, is that we talked about how you want to keep your cursor close to your champion, but when you have unlocked camera, you need to take your mouse cursor as far away from your champion as possible to the edge of your screen to change your view. So if you don't need that cursor close to your champion to dodge and to move your champion with precise control, now you're going to be free to keep your cursor at the edge of your screen so you can bump what you're seeing whenever you want at the same time as you're moving. That's going to be very, very good. And obviously, so that's obviously going to be very, very good as a potential scheme. I think, though, that this version of locked screen is a good idea. So I think it sounds like to me, and I could be wrong, that let's say you move your cursor forward, then your screen would move forward. And I think that that's something that's both going to be very intuitive for new players while still giving you more information than any of the current lock screen modes give you, which is a good thing. But obviously, it's still going to be worse than unlocked camera. So it's not good. Lock screen is never good, but it is a better lock screen option than the other ones. So obviously, for those reasons, I think it's a good idea to add into the game.
Both of these updates are going to be locked to WASD at first, and the only reason we want to do that is to make sure all WASD-related features are in a great state before we roll them out to everybody.
This, I've listened to this sentence a couple of times now, doesn't make any sense to me. So let's say, for example, with the locked camera thing that they're talking about adding, it has nothing to do with WASD. So when he says that the reason why is because they want to make sure all WASD-related features are working well together or something like that, that just doesn't answer the question or make any sense whatsoever, because it does not have anything to do with WASD. It just has to do with your camera control, which is completely separate. So it doesn't make any sense why your new locked camera mode would only be available to people who are using WASD. Now, again, I think everyone should switch to WASD when this comes out because of how strong it's going to be. And you shouldn't be stubborn about it. You should rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with and learn it as fast as possible. But if you're someone who's stubborn and you're playing on, locked camera, you're exactly the type of person who's not switching to WASD, but you want maybe the better locked camera because you're a locked camera player and it's a better version of locked camera. Well, now you can't even try it unless you're playing on WASD. It just doesn't make sense to me, and there's no reason why they're connected whatsoever, yet they're forcing you to do it connected. Now, for me, again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to play on WASD anyways, so I would have access to the option to turn it on, that camera mode. And not only am I going to play on WASD anyways, but I also don't want to play on locked camera anyways, so I don't even want to try their locked camera mode. Yet, I can recognize that for players who do like locked camera, or for players who want WASD or whatever, well, it would be for players who don't want to use WASD or players who like locked camera or whatever. It just doesn't make any sense to prevent them from doing it because they're not connected in any way. And his sentence about explaining why they are, making these settings connected to each other for the meantime to test them or something like that doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's because, and this could be a better answer, and maybe this is what he was trying to say, it just didn't come across clearly. Maybe what he's trying to say is that they think a lot of people will try the new locked camera and they want as much data on WASD as possible. So they're forcing people who are trying the new locked camera to try WASD so that they get more data on WASD. And then, once they go live and ranked, you can do whatever you want. I think that would have been a much better explanation, but maybe that's what he meant. I don't know. It's just, saying that they have to be connected to each other because they're related features or something like that is just a non-answer. And again, I don't mean to nitpick like this, and I yap a lot, but I don't normally nitpick everything Riot says like this. Every single statement, like 90% of the statements that they've said about this, other than like the bug fixes, something's wrong with every sentence. That's my problem, is something's wrong with everything.
While WASD is on PBE, we'll be consistently shipping improvements and tweaks based on your feedback. We're still in an experimental state, so you'll likely see changes patch to patch.
And that's why we really need your feedback. So when WASD launches in a couple of patches, go to the PBE, try every champion, find the weirdest bugs, and tell us all about it. Seriously, some of you are some of the most creative and wildiest players out there, and we need you. So grab a friend, get to the PBE, and WASD your way down the rift. Make sure to give us feedback and help us make a fun control scheme for new players. That's it from us. If you want to learn more, you can check out the blog. It's out now.
Well, also,
the worst part of this too is, imagine, like, they keep selling this, and maybe it is, but they keep selling this as like this is a control scheme for new players. You know what the funny thing is that unless, I mean, they may make it the default, they probably will, that would make sense to a certain extent. I can very easily imagine a world where more players in Master Plus are using WASD than new players are using it. So they say it's a control scheme for new players, but it's going to be so broken that I could very easily see a world where more high-level players are using it than new players. So it seems like if that's the reality, it isn't really a control scheme for new players. It's a control scheme for high-level players that nobody asked for and is going to break the game.
on some smaller stuff.
So that's what
helping
doesn't
new
make
players
sense.
get into League 2. You know, there are some things in League that we believe are unnecessarily hard to track, or just a bit of a chore, that contribute to League being a hard game to learn.
These are great
So we're going to be
changes,
adding
by the way.
jungle timers to all camps, as well as making it easier to track summoner spell usage in the death recap screen. We've also got some
So they didn't really say specifics on the summoner spell timing thing, but I would imagine that, like, one thing that could be really helpful here is imagine the way that you ping Flash. So this is just what I imagine the change would be. Let's say when you ping Flash in the chat, right? If you have the timestamp setting on, which is what you're supposed to do, it'll say, okay, Jin flashed at 2 minutes and 40 seconds into the game. So then you add 5 minutes to that, and then you say, okay, you type Jin, ADF, 740. What would make a lot of sense is if you ping an enemy Flash, right, that instead of it just saying Jin Flash, and then the timestamp at 240 to the left of the chat, it should say, like, Jin Flash, and then automatically add 5 minutes to you on the clock. And so it'll say, like, Jin Flash 740, and it would just automatically tell you the time. That way supports don't have to be doing math in the middle of the game and typing that and copy pasting it to their team. Now, I know that this is another change where a lot of people are going to say, oh, they're dumbing down the game again. And I've seen a lot of that over the years, and I agree, and I've complained about that. So it is a skill that I know how to do that they're taking away yet again from support. But I don't mind this one. I don't think that typing and adding 5 to everything is this amazing, incredibly hard skill. And I don't think that it makes my game experience better or that I enjoy typing all this stuff while I'm walking to lane. I just think that typing like that shouldn't have to be a part of League. And it's so unnecessary when you can just program in the game, ping Jin Flash, and it adds 5 minutes or whatever. Even better, right, for more complicated summoner spells that have a 4-minute cooldown, and the math starts to get a little bit hard, and now you have to remember that cleanse is 4 minutes and heal is this many minutes, and some of them have 30 seconds on them, and then you're having to carry numbers over 50 seconds plus 30 seconds. I'm getting to a minute and 20 seconds added to the thing. It gets a lot more complicated than it should be. You also have boots, Ionian boots, and Cosmic Insights runes that make the summoner spells actually different amounts. It would be a bit of a nerf to those things, because one of the things that's nice about them is that they throw off your timing on the summoner spells. But I would say that a really, a really cool change would be not only just automatically add 5 minutes, but the game knows when Jin's Flash is up, right? So just tell the other team when Jin's Flash is up. These kinds of things would be amazing. And it's starting to become a competitive problem as well, because there are apps like Porofessor and stuff like that where it shows the enemy teams like summoner spells as options on the side. And if you have those apps, all you have to do is like click on their flash and it starts the timer for you, and does all the math. I think it can even do math on the summoner spell haste as well. And so then you obviously, with weird amounts of summoner spell haste, like Ionian Boots give 18, you start to get into like, okay, instead of his flash being 5 minutes, it's actually like, I don't even know, like 4 minutes and 20 seconds or something like that. And so you start to get into some weird math. And then 420, by the way, I didn't even mean to do that. And then, so you get into some weird math. Obviously, these third-party apps, yet again, are adding those things into the game for some players, giving them a competitive edge for free, for no reason. Riot has to build those features into the game, like when they started auto-timing jungle camps and stuff. So back in the day, you used to time red buff, blue buff, particularly dragon and baron timers, right? Support would time 5 minutes for the dragons, because you wouldn't know when they would spawn otherwise. And I think that some people complained when that was taken away. I think I probably did. Hey, this is this unique skill that we have on support that kind of makes my role unique and cool and has a complicated level of game knowledge and depth to the game. And taking it away and simplifying it kind of sucks. But the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that in order to attract new players to League, and one of the things that made League successful in the first place is that League is a simple MOBA. It is the, it's not that it's easy, but compared to Dota, the reason why League was so successful compared to Dota is because League is the iPhone of MOBAs. I'm not anymore. iPhones are kind of bad now, but iPhone was really good because it was not the best phone. You could do so much more on like a BlackBerry or something like that. But what the iPhone could do, it wasn't that it could do as much as Google's phone, or that it, the Pixel or something, whatever it was. Maybe that's still a thing. But it wasn't that it could do as much as a Google phone, and it wasn't that it could do as much as a BlackBerry or had as many features, but it was so much easier to learn how to use. And especially older people were not going to sit there and figure out, like you did when you were a kid. They're not going to try every single button in every single setting to learn how it works, because they don't have time to do that. So the iPhone succeeded because it was a simpler, more user-friendly and accessible product. Riot is making the right decision in simplifying League and dumbing down the game, because it will attract new players. It will keep players who don't have as much time to play up to date with the game and engaged. You have to balance between keeping the game fun and exciting and new for players who are spamming 10 games a day, but also keeping the game simple for players who are trying to come into the game. And getting rid of complicated redundancies, especially that are necessary in order to be able to play the game at a higher level, like knowing exactly how long every summoner spell is, and with all the runes and the boots and stuff like that, especially when a third-party app is giving people that advantage for free anyways, you have to simplify and adjust. And so I really like that change. And I also like, of course, the jungle timer change is something I specifically asked for like 2 days ago. So they probably had this planned before I even asked for that. But obviously that's something that you get with, Porofessor and these other apps or whatever. And I think that that's good, that's coming to League, because these apps, first off, they're bloatware. They take up way too much of your CPU and drop your FPS in League, so they're annoying to use. And they mess with all kinds of other stuff that I don't want them to mess with, like my item sets, like I talked about. So I'd rather have those things as default features in the game and not ever have to touch one of these third-party apps ever again. And every time one of these third-party apps comes out with a feature that is so crazy that people feel like they have to have it, Riot needs to add that into the game ASAP. And that's what they're doing here, and I think that they're doing a good job with it. And this comes up every couple of years, because someone will come up with a new thing that an app can do for you to help you advance your gameplay. And, I'm sure people will come up with another one in the next couple of years.
Additional changes planned in this sort of vein coming later in the year, and more on those in a future dev update.
Hey all, I'm Riot Froxon.
And I'm just a capybara. We're here to talk more about the ongoing work we've been doing to reduce game-ruining behavior. Earlier this
Oh god, we're an hour and 44 minutes in and I just realized they're just now starting on the smurfing section. Well, here we go.
year, we began issuing LP refunds for when we detected cheaters in your league games.
While also banning them, of course.
This is the second
After
big
that,
thing.
we started rolling out improvements to our griefing and inting detection to make sure these sorts of people don't end up in your games. With all the work that we're doing for the future of League, we also know that the element we need to maintain above all else is League's competitive integrity.
Agreed.
And in order to keep that reality, we need to give you games with 9 other players of similar skill levels.
We've heard your frustrations over the years, and we know that you want us to do more about smurfing. And we agree. It sucks, and it makes your games worse. So starting in patch 2518, we're going to be taking additional action against accounts that use the 2 most common smurfing behaviors we see, boosting and hitchhiking.
So I already have a problem with this, but obviously we'll get into it. I think it's, so to be clear, when I say that there's a problem with this, I don't believe their statement, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure they have the data and I don't. I don't believe that the 2 most common forms of smurfing are boosting and hitchhiking. So boosting people are probably familiar with. Boosting is when you play on an account that's not yours and you rank it up for that person, whatever, or you boost an account and that's new and then you sell it or something like that. But boosting is obviously a very high skill player coming onto an account, not with the intent to learn a new role, not with the intent even to climb on their own role, to create a practice account or to do an unranked to challenger climb, even though those are controversial and stuff like that. But not for any of that. Not to do educational content or any of that or for their own personal use, but specifically not for personal use. So to boost to help someone else achieve a rank that they don't deserve. So that obviously affects competitive integrity a lot because it's not the boosting part that is really the problem in a way, because there's not a difference between a challenger player. Like if you're a gold player, right, and a challenger player decides to create an unranked to challenger challenge and they play their main champion in their main role all the way to challenger, the games that they play against you in gold are just as negatively impacting to you as if someone decides, I'm a challenger player, I'm going to boost an account to challenger and then sell it, and then they play the same number of games, try just as hard and are just as good against you in gold. The effect on you as a gold player is actually the same. So the reality is that it's not the boosting part itself, which is just like smurfing for a few games through an elo. It's not just the boosting itself that's the problem. It's that it's not the games the booster plays on the account. It's the games that the person plays on the account after the booster's done with the account. Well, it's kind of both. But what they're effectively saying is that because people can do it for their own personal use, it's really the thing that we're more concerned about is the person now getting to play at a rank for maybe 50 or 100 games that they don't belong at and ruining those games as well. But yeah, both parts are bad, to be fair. But I don't necessarily think that their statement that boosting accounts like that and that hitchhiking, which is this new term that they've invented, but I like it, which is essentially like duo boosting. So a high-rated player going and duoing with a much lower-rated player for money or even a friend, and then carrying that person significantly higher than they should be. That term hitchhiking, or I would call it duo boosting, is kind of the same thing. Those forms of boosting, I don't believe that that is the primary. They said that this was the that I'll go back and replay exactly what he said, but he said that this was like their primary mode of smurfing that they see. Again, they have data, and so maybe they're right. I don't think that that's right at all. I think most people smurfing are smurfing for personal use. I don't think that many accounts are like, so yes, a lot of accounts get sold as a total number, as a raw nominal number. There are a lot of accounts that get bought and sold, but there are more accounts, in my opinion, that people use as personal smurfs. and maybe my experience is biased because I use all, I have like maybe 10, I have a bunch of accounts, even though I don't even Smurf that much, but I have like one for every single role. So that's 5, which includes my main account. And then I have one account for, or no, 2 other accounts for playing support. So I have 2 practice accounts. So that's 7. And then I also have an account for playing with my wife. So that's 8. So I have something like maybe 8 or 9 different level 30 accounts. And all of them were for personal use. So all of them were hand leveled myself by me. So in my opinion, my experience especially, my experience is biased towards, I think there's a lot of high elo players with, a bunch of personal use, either bot or hand leveled accounts. And as a result, I think that most smurfing that occurs is these players who, let's say they have an account. So you'll have low elo players like gold players and silver players who are just trying to create a new account because they're upset with where they're at in ranked, and they think that creating a new account is going to help them get higher, or their account's cursed or something like that. That's one portion of it. You have high elo players who are smurfing to learn other roles, high elo players who are smurfing to create a second account to practice champions on their main role, or to even just to play their main champion and to just get another account to high elo. There are a lot of high elo players who just would rather play 200 games. Let's say they're going to play 1,000 games in a year. They'd rather play 200 games per account on 5 different accounts and rank 5 accounts to challenger, but never play the 1,000 games to push, to try to get higher in challenger. Because for them, they'd much rather, for a lot of people, it's much more fun to win 60-70% of all of your games that you ever play. That feels a lot nicer. You're just cruising through. If you're a streamer as well, that's a lot easier to do, right, than playing at your peak rank while you're distracted by streaming and chat and trying to be entertaining. So I really believe that there's a lot of smurfing that is personal use smurfing, not boosting. So my intuition tells me, and I have a lot of experience with this game, I could be wrong, they have the stats, but my experience tells me that that's boosting and duo boosting is not the prime reason or the main reason for Smurf accounts. I just don't believe that that's true. But
we need to give you games with 9 other players of similar skill levels.
We've heard your frustrations over the years, and we know that you want us to do more about smurfing. And we agree. It sucks, and it makes your games worse. So starting in patch 2518, we're going to be taking additional action against accounts that use the 2 most common smurfing behaviors we see.
So he said these are the 2 most common smurfing behaviors we see. Maybe he's right, because in terms of a plurality, right? Like maybe if you were to break down, and the reasons why people smurf are complicated, right? You could even say that it's for multiple reasons. Sometimes it could be because I want to get a practice account to a higher rank, but I'm also, using the account temporarily to be able to play with a friend while it's at a certain rank. And then I move on from playing with that person once I'm getting a little bit higher, or, things like that. But so you might have multiple reasons. So it could be the case that like boosting and duo boosting are like, maybe let's say like 15% of smurfing and 10% of smurfing respectively, and the number makes sense. It's only 25% of smurfing, but you could break down the other reasons into so many different reasons, like learning a new role, learning new champions on your role, trying to get a practice account to a lower rank, trying to get a practice account to your main rank. If you break it down into enough reasons, maybe those other things become smaller. But if you were to just break it down into 2 categories, boosting and personal use for yourself, I would say that boosting is gotta be not the primary reason why people smurf. I just don't agree with that. So why do I think that they're saying that? I think that they're saying that because they, again, said that they hear people complaining a lot about smurfing, and they want to sound like they're doing as much as possible to deal with it, and that they're doing everything that they can. And because of that, they're being hyperbolic by saying, or maybe, I mean, it's hard to say that it's hyperbole when they just straight up say it's the most common forms of, I don't know. I think that they're lying to a certain extent. Maybe I'm just wrong. My gut instinct tells me that they're lying to sound like they're doing more about smurfing than they actually are by tackling the main cause of smurfing, even though that's not actually the main cause of smurfing. But I just want people to be aware of that and think about that.
Boosting and hitchhiking.
Simply put, boosting is when someone else plays on your account to climb to a higher rank, and hitchhiking is when a higher skilled player duos on a fraudulent, usually purchased account with a lower skilled player to artificially increase their rank. We'll be taking action on both accounts in these situations, both the booster and the boostee.
One of the reasons we're doing...
The other thing that is really important to note about this that a lot of people were saying is, for example, I mentioned it with my accounts. How do you tell the difference, and is it even okay? I don't even know after watching this. How do you tell the difference between someone who is a booster who's being paid to duo boost someone to a rank that they would never get to on their own versus like me playing with my wife? So for example, as someone who hit Challenger earlier this year and is consistently a Master Plus player for like the past 4 years, my wife is Iron 2 and she's never hit gold before. So she's like Iron to Silver. Right now she's like Bronze 4. Am I not ever allowed to play with my wife in ranked? Are we not allowed to duo together? That would be my question. Is it hitchhiking or duo boosting for me to play any games with my wife in ranked ever? Because to me, that feels like I sort of get that, but it's also like really a crummy system because I should be able to duo with my wife if I want to duo with my wife. You know what I mean? Now, I personally can't stand playing with Iron players, my wife included. So we don't play a ton together. Also, she's busy. We got a baby, you know? So like she doesn't have a ton of time to play League. The last couple of days we, got her set up and she started playing again since she's been pregnant. With the, since she couldn't play while she was pregnant, the brain doesn't work. So, okay, I'm trying. The point is that she started playing. She's played like 19 games or something like that this whole year. So in my personal situation, it's not even that big of a deal because my guess is that we play so few ranked games together anyways that we wouldn't get, they wouldn't be sure that we're duo boosting. We're not going up enough in ranked. I can't stand it anyways. So I'm not the type of person who's going to duo boost my wife to diamond or something like that. And I think that, then we could have a discussion about, well, maybe I shouldn't be able to take my Iron wife to diamond. Maybe that would be unfair because what if she goes and queues up in diamond without me and she's inting these diamond players, right? That seems a little bit unfair. Then we could have a moral gray area there for sure. Even to, gold or platinum or something where she hasn't been before, a bit of a moral gray area, right? Because obviously I'm carrying her. But we should be allowed to play ranked together, right? So what I guess I'm confused about, especially for other players, especially maybe couples and stuff like that who play together and just don't happen to be similar ranks, are you just not allowed to play ranked together? Because what they don't really clarify, they just say that hitchhiking or duo boosting is a higher rated player playing with a lower rated player to get them to a rank that they maybe haven't been before, or to rank them up. So does that mean that if you and your partner, you and your boyfriend and girlfriend, your spouse or whatever are too far apart in ranked, you're just not allowed to play ranked together? That seems like not a good system. It seems unfair. And how does the detection process, not that they're going to tell us what the detection process is, because then people would be able to use that to avoid detection, but how do you avoid banning just like a couple duoing? How do they tell the difference between me playing with my wife or some other person playing with their wife or their girlfriend and an actual duo boosting situation where somebody's getting paid to play with somebody they don't know, like they said, maybe on a bot account. Great, that one's easy because it's a bot account. They're about to ban a bunch of bot accounts they're going to get into, so they're going to be able to hopefully deal with that problem in and of itself. But I don't know, it just seems maybe it's an empty threat to scare people away from doing it. But I need some clarification, and I think a lot of people need some clarification from Riot, because it's not clear that they're not just going to ban a bunch of innocent people for playing together. And I think that sucks. I think you should be able to play with your friends. I think you should be able to play with your wife, especially when we're talking about, again, I think that, look, ranked is competitive, ranked is serious at all ranks, but we have to recognize the reality that ranked is not as serious in Iron as it is in Challenger. It's not as serious in Bronze as it is in Challenger. So at the end of the day, the disruption or whatever of us playing together in Bronze, I really don't feel like is such a big deal competitively in Bronze, competitively, by the way, that they need to prevent us from playing together or something like that. So I need some clarification. We all need some clarification from Riot on this one. But I have heard a lot of people saying this is the death of e-girls. With no hitchhiking, no duo boosting. So we will see. But yeah, I mean, what does that mean, right? I've always considered boosting, obviously boosting as a service means that you're paying someone, usually someone you don't know. I don't think that playing with your friend, even if you get them a higher rank for a little bit or something like that, or like one rank higher than they've ever been before, I don't really consider that boosting. And I don't think it should be considered boosting, and I don't think it should be banned, et cetera, et cetera. Oh my goodness. So let's see what else they say about it.
Or now is because Vanguard has given us the increased capability and accuracy we need to determine if accounts are being shared or sold, which is what enables most smurfing.
So this is another problem that I'm concerned about. Oh my goodness. This is another problem I'm concerned about, is they're saying that they're using extra tools that they have from Vanguard to detect whether accounts are being bought or sold. Another thing where they're not going to be able to give us clarification on what they mean by this. But, for example, we had an issue the other day where, for whatever reason, she's trying to play League and her computer and her client was running into a bug where she would try to load into the game and her game is not loading and starting. So she's gotten remade on a couple of times, and even into low priority queue and stuff like that. So one time we realized she should just log into my computer, because I wasn't in game. She should log into my computer and log in quickly to get into that game before it gets remade, when her thing was bugging out and not loading the game. So she logs into my computer and plays one game on my computer. Well, I didn't play that game on my computer on her account. She played the game on my computer because her computer's not working. Unfortunately, this type of detection would say, hey, this computer is the Ben computer associated with BenTbeyondrepair and these accounts, and all of a sudden it's playing this random game on this other way lower ranked account. It looks like he's boosting her. But I wasn't the one who played the game. She was having a computer issue, so she used the other computer that we have in the office. You know what I mean? So it's sure, obviously the detection system is going to be set up in a way where one game of that happening is not going to get the account banned for boosting. It would have to be this severe pattern of maybe it was over a bunch of games where they gained a lot of elo and rank or something in combination. But even then, what if this computer that I'm playing on is better, it's faster, and realistically most of the time, unless the baby's asleep, only one of us can play at a time. So most of the time only one of us is playing anyways, so she might choose in general, rather than playing on her computer, which is older and a little bit slower, she might choose to play on this computer. Well, she plays all of her ranked games on this computer. Are we both going to get banned? My main account in Master Plus could get banned because she played 20 or 30 games on the better computer that we have because we're sharing a PC? Or are we gonna have to make a ticket hoping to get all of our accounts unbanned, and maybe Riot unbans all of our accounts or something like that. I see a very bad future with this. You also have a situation where people go over to a friend's house and play on a different IP. People use VPNs, and so they're playing from a different IP. Sometimes it looks like they're even playing from a different country. I hope that, and look, Vanguard's obviously a very detailed, good system. They do have some smart people working on this, and they are usually very careful about not false banning people. But this is the first time where, and I think reducing smurfing is great. I think banning people who are genuinely boosting accounts for money and stuff like that is great. But you have to be cautious with sweeping changes like this, because you will potentially ban a lot of innocent players and like couples and friends and stuff like that. And I worry that a change like this is the first time I've heard a change like this that may be too sweeping, right? It may go too far. It may catch a lot of people, but it depends on the details. If it has to be like 50 games in a short period of time that where the account goes up 2 ranks or something like that, I imagine it won't be a problem for most people. And again, for me personally, even though I'm giving examples of how this could affect us, it probably won't be a big deal. She'll probably just keep playing on her computer, especially since we're concerned about this. And she's not going to go up very much in ranked. That we know that for sure. And I can't stand playing the games with her, so I'm not going to boost her. I'm not going to boost her very high, and I don't even know if I could get her to diamond if I tried. Probably not, especially because we both main support and stuff like that too. So, I'm not getting her much higher than like gold. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, like she's gotten probably silver 1 or something on her own before. So if we get to gold 4, is that really that big of a deal? Probably not a big deal. Nobody would care, and the system wouldn't pick up on it, et cetera, et cetera. We probably don't even play enough games that even if she came here and played every single game on my computer and, or we duoed every game or something like that, I'm pretty sure that we don't play enough, she doesn't even play enough League that the system would ever be confident enough to ban us. But yeah. So obviously I'm worried this is too sweeping, but we'll see.
Back in 25-13, we added a new rank manipulation report category, so you could let us know when you believe someone is boosting, hitchhiking, deranking, or whatever.
Your reports were instrumental.
See, this is kind of good, because let's say that you are just duoing with a friend or whatever, or you're only duoing slightly down. So let's say you are smurfing to duo with a friend or a girlfriend or something like that, or a wife, but you're platinum and you're playing in silver. There's a big difference between a professional booster who's like challenger, who's trying to make good use of their time, and so they're absolutely stomping games, versus a player who's like a plat player who's not stomping that hard. You're going to pick up way more reports for boosting and ranked manipulation if you're that challenger player hard carrying that game. Whereas if you're me and you're struggling with your Iron Wife, you're probably not going to pick up that many reports anyways. Or if you're like a lower ranked player who's only duoing down a little bit. I think morally we agree that it's acceptable when you're like, the further apart you are in rank, the worse it is. And unfortunately for me and my wife, challenger to iron, you can't get any worse than that. But, when you're like a plat player duoing with a gold, or, well, you would be able to do that even potentially on your main. But let's say you're a platinum player and you have a gold account to play with a gold friend on, or you have, you're in silver playing with the silver friend. It's bad, because it is like, you're definitely playing down. But it's not as bad as a challenger player playing with an iron player, and it's not as bad as a professional booster who's trying extremely hard to win every single game, and make great use of their time, because their time is money, and stuff like that. And they're going to stomp as hard as they can, and et cetera, et cetera. And they're going to implement strategies and certain champion picks, and I don't think that there's, I could be wrong. I don't think that there's a lot of support players who are in Challenger who are duo boosting. Let's put it that way. I think that there's certain champion types and stuff like that where they know they can win a lot of games very easily in low elo. So I think you don't see a lot of support players go into boosting, for example. It's just too slow and not as efficient because your 80 carry blows,
us gather a bunch of data to improve our detection systems, and we'll be using a combination of our detection systems and reports to punish these accounts. You'll also get a feedback report,
so maybe the reporting thing will help make sure, innocent people or people just playing with their friends and their girlfriend or wife aren't as caught up in this as we would worry about.
Know when you've helped us find these accounts. And we're going to be doubling down on banning accounts that are being bought, sold, or shared, regardless of whether or not they're used in ranked smurfing.
For those of you who are wondering if this applies to your alts.
Okay, so he said, I should back this up because I didn't quite hear, but he said, and this is another big piece of what they're doing, they're going to be like widespread banning accounts that are bought, shared, or sold. So let's listen to that.
Whether or not they're used in ranked smurfing.
For those of you who are
wondering
accounts. You'll also get a feedback report, so you'll know when you've helped us find these accounts. And we're going to be doubling down on banning accounts that are being bought, sold, or shared.
Bought, sold, or shared. So obviously, I think one of the best ways to reduce the amount of smurfing in a healthy way that doesn't have overreach is to ban bot accounts. Because there's two type of bot accounts, so right, depending on how you spell the word. So bot accounts meaning you paid. Well, actually, I'm not sure which version he's talking about. Usually it's both, right? Usually there are companies and people who have bots that can level accounts automatically, and then they take these massive number of bots that they've used to level a bunch of accounts to level 30. They take all these level 30 accounts and then they sell them online to any random player who basically wants a Smurf account for all of those personal use reasons, or in a lot of cases, as they said, boosters will buy these accounts to duo boost, or they'll buy the account for $20 at level 30 because they know that they're just going to rank it up really quickly. A fresh level 30 account, they can get it to masters really quickly and sell it for a couple $100, and then they can start over. And if the account gets banned later on because it was leveled using bots, it doesn't even affect them because they're not the one holding onto the account. What I've learned is that if the account's eventually going to get banned no matter what after a year, 2 years, or 3 years because it's an account that was bought, you should just hand level your account. So I had some experiences back in the day. I bought a level 30 account, and it was the first account aside from my main that I ranked up all the way to diamond. So it was like the highest I had ever ranked a secondary account up to. So I finally had like a practice account that was at a rank that was close to my main rank, and that I could use as maybe an alternative account if my main account wasn't going so well, or at the start of the season to have a second shot at doing well at the start of the season, or to practice other champions on it at a high rank and stuff like that for good practice. And that account got banned because I had bought this account and it was leveled using bots, and so it got banned. After that experience, I don't like wasting money, and so I realized that if I buy these accounts from these websites, it would have been better if the account was banned right away, because now I've put 100 hours of games into this account, gotten it all the way to diamond, and now the account's gone. So this has happened to people like Dantes as well on stream. He bought an account to play in Korea or something like that. They banned him while he was live trying to hit Challenger in Korea, and it ruined his whole Korea trip and stuff like that. This is why I've realized, and a lot of other people have realized, that you might as well just hand level your accounts. It takes a little while, but it's not that bad, And so that's why people, for example, Tyler1 has hand leveled all of his accounts, for this reason, so that they don't get banned. And that's why you don't see his accounts randomly getting banned while he's doing his challenges, whereas Dantes' accounts are getting banned because he didn't take the time to hand level them. Plus, Korea is complicated, right? You need a social security number to be able to get an account. He obviously doesn't have one. So the only way you can get an account in Korea is if you talk to Riot and plan with them that, hey, we're doing this thing. I need an account for it. Can you get me an account? They, take a while, and then they approve it, and they give you an account that's level 30 for you. They give you a Riot account. And, usually that's how that goes. But sometimes maybe you don't have the relationship with Riot to be able to get that, or Riot just doesn't want to give it to you for some reason, and so now you can't do that, and then it becomes a problem. So long story short, one of the best ways, obviously, to deal with boosting and smurfing is to get rid of these bot accounts so that people have to hand level their accounts. Takes longer, which means they're going to spend less time smurfing. They're going to have less smurf accounts. And it just keeps everything like for personal use in-house and not for a bunch of money and, for other reasons and stuff like that. And the people who are buying them to be able to spam accounts aren't going to be able to spam as many accounts by just buying an infinite number of accounts. So they're trying to ban more of those bot accounts. So bought, shared, and sold. Or what was it? So shared, obviously we know that sharing accounts is also, against the rules and stuff like that. Again, I would say, though, I'm a little bit concerned about what their detection system is going to be like when it comes to sharing accounts. Because, again, if we're talking about Vanguard, which is looking at your computer, if what we're actually talking about is sharing a computer or sharing a network, there's plenty of siblings who share a computer. There's plenty of families who share a computer, girlfriend and boyfriend who share a computer, or maybe for a certain period of time even would share a computer. Friends even, they go over to a friend's house and play on their computer or share a computer or a network or something like that, end up playing at a different IP, etc. So I really worry about what their detection means when it comes to shared accounts. But again, I would hope that it means a very extensive history of shared accounts so that it's obvious that it's all messed up. But I worry about the innocent getting banned there. What else is
And we're going to be doubling down on banning accounts that are being bought, sold, or shared.
Well, bought and sold are the same thing, right? But yeah, so bought, sold, and shared. So
regardless of whether or not they're used in ranked smurfing.
For those.
And yeah, this is a good point. I mean, preemptively ban the waves of bot accounts that are sitting around at level 30 waiting to be sold, or that somebody's got it but they haven't played their ranked games yet. You can still see that it's obviously been botted to level 30 and then bought and sold and whatnot. So you can do things there.
Those of you who are wondering if this applies to your alts, if you're the only one who's ever played on your alt and you aren't engaging in ranked manipulation, you're fine.
So I would ask, like, he gives a lot of caveats here to say that obviously we're not doing a lot about most of what people, this is the part where he reassures people who do a bit of smurfing and have alt accounts that your account's not going to get banned. But there's a lot of questions about what he specifically means here. So he says, the account sharing thing we know is not allowed, so that's whatever. But he says, let me go back.
Only one who's ever played on your alt and you aren't engaging in ranked manipulation.
If you aren't engaging in ranked manipulation, so what does that mean specifically, right? Am I engaged in ranked manipulation if I'm just smurfing in general? And I'm playing my main role and my main champion to a certain rank so that I have a practice account or a second account to use at the start of the season or what have you. Or I just want to get multiple accounts to a high rank. Am I engaged in rank manipulation if I play with a friend who's lower ranked than me? How much lower ranked than me? If I, play with my wife who's lower ranked than me, how much lower ranked than me does she have to be? Does it only count if we play a certain number of games? Does it only count if we climb a certain amount? Does it only count if I'm playing my main role and my main champion? Or is it okay if I'm like sort of trolling or sort of lower elo by playing a champion or a role I'm not as comfortable with? Does that apply if I'm playing with friends or my wife? So again, there's all these questions about what do they mean? They don't really define specifically what they mean by rank manipulation. So I have no idea whether I'm going to get banned or not, or whether, in my case, again, I don't do a lot of smurfing actually, even though I have so many accounts. Again, of the many different accounts, let's see, the 5 for each different role are just all playing with myself. So there's nothing wrong with any of that. And he will talk about like playing different roles or whatever is one example of like not as bad morally. And so you're less likely to be banned for it. Then I have like 2 accounts for playing support on, I guess. And then I have an account for duoing with my wife. So obviously the one that would be in the most jeopardy would be the one I duo with my wife on. But what about, okay, I'm playing main champion, main role on 2 different support accounts that aren't my main. Is that rank manipulation or no? If I play with a friend on one of those accounts, is that ranked manipulation or no? And how many games? You don't get specifics, and so I have no idea if I'm engaging in behavior that they want to be okay or want to be banned. So this is the problem with smurfing right now, is they're obviously taking steps to restrict smurfing a little bit, but technically smurfing is okay, but technically smurfing is also not okay. So we need to know where the line is, otherwise you just don't know whether you're going to get banned or not. And I think that's what people are looking for clarification on.
You're fine. So if you've got another account that you created and leveled on your own to learn another role or play norms with lower skilled.
So if you've got another account that you leveled on your own, obviously we know that this is a big deal as well, because it's not okay to buy accounts, and those will get banned. And it's not okay to use a bot to level up an account for you, or to, you know, have some third party use a bot to level up an account for you and then you to buy it from them. So that's fine. In my case, of course, I'm safe. If you have an account that you bought from someone else, I'm telling you, I've been saying this for years actually, eventually your account is going to get banned, and if you put a bunch of hours into it, that is really going to suck when it gets banned. Always hand level your accounts. It's not only is it following the rules, but by following the rules, you're less likely to get banned. Then he also said, like, if you're, you know, again, it's morally better if you're playing another role. And then they said, if you're playing normal games with your friends, this one sounds ridiculous to me, because you probably, for the most part, just play normal games with your friends on your main account. Now, there are some very rare cases where if I have a friend who's literally never played League before, I'm going to hop onto like a level 3 account or whatever, or a level 10 account or whatever, an account that's not level 30, to play with them so that they're not playing against people who are plat or whatever, right? But unless it's a new player, and maybe this is just me personally, who is hopping on a Smurf account other than for a player who, you know, a friend who's new to the game? Who is hopping on a Smurf account to play normals with their friends? That to me doesn't make any sense. But sure, you know, maybe some people do that, or maybe we are talking about playing with people who've never played before.
Friends or whatever, don't worry. We're not coming after you. And if we ever do get it wrong, let us know by filing an appeal with our player support team. We are in the process of banning a bunch of...
So again, he gives these situations where, like, if you're just playing norms, if you're playing an alternate role or whatever, if you're, you know, if you level your accounts yourself, but they don't cover all these other questions, like, well, what, okay, you know, all the other things we've already been through. I'm not going to restate them, but obviously, like, well, what if you're playing with your friends, or, you know, in ranked? What if you're not playing an alternate role? You know, then what? Are you just automatically banned? How do they even know? You know?
Accounts that were commercially botted and meant to be resold. We're going to go through and also ban a bunch of accounts that have been sold or shared that people use as part of a roster of alts to do various bad things.
Another longer term project.
So this is the big piece of this, is they're going to ban a bunch of accounts, including accounts that people are currently using in ranked right now, or have been using in ranked for a while, in a big wave. And this is going to be a mixed bag. It's in some ways a very good thing, because obviously, as I've said, I think people who are buying accounts, you know, I don't think that that's okay. And I think it's a good way to reduce the number of Smurfs. I don't really even think smurfing's okay. Again, it's these moral gray areas where it's like, you know, pieces of smurfing are okay, so and pieces aren't. So if I was trying to create a strict set of rules, I would say, of course, if you're, you know, you shouldn't use a bot to level the account for you. You shouldn't buy an account from someone else. You shouldn't drastically manipulate someone else's rank, you know, by duoing with them. You shouldn't be able to ever share your account or play on someone else's account, or have someone play on your account, etc. Those would be hard lines. Where you get into moral gray area, as I said, is what if you have a challenger player who's married to an iron player and they're playing together in ranked on a Smurf account? How many games before that's disruptive or ranked manipulation? How much elo do they have to gain, or rank do they have to gain before that's ranked manipulation or like considered boosting, even though you're friends or family with the person? You know, what if you're sharing PCs? What if you're sharing networks? What if you go over to a friend's house? You know, then you have, like, what if I'm playing by myself on a hand-leveled account on an alternate role. Sounds like they're saying that's fine, and I think most players agree that that's fine. Sounds like they're saying that's fine. What if I'm playing on an alternate account that I leveled, on a Smurf account that I leveled, but I'm playing my main champion in my main role? That is something that they didn't cover, and that is a huge percentage of people smurfing, right? Is just playing main champion, main role on another account. So, I would say there, what is the moral judgment there? Is it okay if you do that on one other account, so you have a practice account? Is it, but it's not okay if you're doing it on 10 accounts or something like that, and so you're impacting a huge number of games, and you're just your existence in League is just to smurf and to ruin a large number of low MMR games. Like, what is the situation there? We don't know. It's just left as this moral gray area, and there's no comment really from Riot on it. Obviously, if there's no comment, they're probably not going to come out right and start banning people left and right for it. But they're leaving it open as this gray area, which is kind of concerning, or we don't know what the guidance is.
We're working on that will also help reduce smurfing is Trueskill 2, with its increased MMR detection accuracy. We started testing it in North America in March in normal SR and ARAM. We then fixed some issues and expanded testing to all unranked queues in Korea last month. We're seeing players placed correctly in about 5 games, which is 3 to 5 times faster than our current system.
So this is one sentence kind of throwaway line, but this was a whole nother topic, actually. I don't want to keep going, otherwise we're going to be here forever again. So we have done a lot of videos that you should go check out if you go to the channel and search for Trueskill. We've gone through what exactly Trueskill 1 is, or Trueskill, and what Trueskill 2 is, and there's a paper that's been published on them. But the TLDR on Trueskill is that rather than using the MMR system that League has used for the last 15 years, and to this day we still use, basically the MMR system it's essentially the ELO system from chess, as everybody knows, just a slight variation of it to apply to teams. But for the most part, the MMR system is a pretty true, just ELO system where you gain or lose ELO based on how much higher rated the average ELO of the enemy team is. Really, the only difference from chess is that you're matchmaking based on the average MMR of your team, with some restrictions on like roll queue and things like that, and trying to balance autofills and balance duos and things. But essentially, it's just trying to match teams that their average MMR is within a certain distance from each other, like within like 20 MMR, and well, without going into all the details, because I was trying to give a TLDR. The TLDR is that we've been using the MMR system for 15 years. The only changes that have been made to it, and it is very secretive, but the main changes that have been made to it are to account for role select, autofills, restricting matchmaking to teams being within a certain average distance in MMR from each other, and making sure that this is a new-ish, like last couple of years, people complaining about getting matched with people who are too many face ranks different from them. So there is some restrictions as well on not just MMR, but making sure that your face ranks are within like 1 or 2 ranks of each other, or sort of close to each other. So people don't see weird games where there's like Emerald players in Challenger or like Silver players in Plat as much. But it happens. Things like that. But other than some League-related basics like that, it's essentially the MMR system, which is essentially the ELO system from chess, more or less. A lot of people, this is a very contentious topic. A lot of people don't agree. But they're working on Trueskill 2. So this is the first time that I've heard news about what's happening with Trueskill 2 for about a year. And it's really big news, which is I was not sure whether Trueskill 2 was already implemented in ranked or whether it wasn't. And it sounds like they're confirming, if they're telling the truth, by the way, that Trueskill 2 is not implemented yet in the game, but that they're getting much closer, and that it's in normal games in Korea, and it will probably be coming to ranked soon. And they said, I think, that they did that in March of this year. So they have now like 5 months or so of data of Trueskill and normal games. The main difference between Trueskill and MMR is that MMR takes a long time to accurately calibrate your rank, but it's a very nice system because it only takes into account wins and losses. And so your only incentive is to play for wins and losses, and that's it. So that's one of the things that makes it nice. So it's like got a positive and a negative to it. The positive is that your only incentive is to win and not lose. The negative is that because you start every player at 1200 MMR, although that's changed as well, right? They use normal game MMR to now impact your starting MMR on a fresh account, if you didn't know that. So obviously not every player is starting at 1200. But if you've ever played a game like chess or another game that's used a true ELO system, like Age of Empires uses it, when you first start, you're probably not really a 1200 ELO player. So what happens is you actually start at 1200 and you lose a lot of games. You'll go like 7-20 or something, just you have a terrible time. And you win like 30% or 33% of your games until you drop down all the way from 1200 ELO down to like 700. If you're really bad and really new, maybe all the way down to 400 or 500, like the lowest. And then you start to finally get to a rank where the people you're playing against are so bad that you start winning games again, and now you can sort of start your climb. This is a problem because if you're a new player playing a game like League, and you're not entirely new because you have gotten to level 30, but you're new to the ranked experience. A good ranked experience as far as retaining players and keeping them enjoying the game, having a fun time and that sort of thing, and continuing to play ranked for years to come, is instead of they're going to quit if they go 10-20 and they win 33% of their ranked games for their first 30. They're going to think, I'm terrible at this game. I will never be good at this game. I'm not having fun. I'm losing way too many games. This is miserable. And then they're going to quit. At best, they'll quit ranked and go back to normals. At worst, they'll just give up on the game entirely. So what's much better is if you can start that player at a lower rank, like you can start that player in Iron, and then they can slowly work their way up, that's great. It's also a good way to combat smurfing, because if you can tell that a smurf is smurfing and start the smurf at 1600 elo instead of 1200, then that player won't play in a 1200 elo game and a 1300 elo game and a 1400 elo game and a 1500 elo game, and you'll save a bunch of games that player would have otherwise impacted by smurfing. So there's different ways that you can do that. One way that you can help calibrate is by using the normal game data to affect your ranked MMR. And so they've done that. So they're using normal game wins and losses, your normal game MMR, to impact your ranked placement. This is also the reason why you're required to play at least 10 normal games before you play ranked, because by requiring people to play 10 normal games, they're ensuring that they at least have a sample size of 10 games to get some effect in one direction or the other on a player's MMR before they start them in ranked, so that no player, unless they do totally average at 1200, but basically no player starts exactly at 1200, because you're forced to play those 10 normal games to help calibrate your MMR, to tell whether you're smurfing or to tell whether you're a new player or bad or whatever, or whether you're just average and you should start about average. And that's fine. So what are things that they could do to make that process even better, to place smurfs even higher right away, so that rather than smurfing through silver and gold and plat and just winning a bunch of games, they're immediately thrown into their actual rank. So if you want a practice account or you're trying to learn a new role, you're thrown into the rank that you deserve and belong at on that role or that champion, but you're not getting to do what we talked about, which is kind of an immoral version of smurfing, where you're just playing because you want to win 60 or 70% of all of your games. So you're running account after account after account through bronze, silver, gold, platinum, just for the fun of winning 70% of your games versus lower rated players. And that kind of disruptive smurfing, which usually takes more games, because you're just trying to cruise through, you're not trying to get to the rank or whatever. You're just spending too many games and too many accounts manipulating lower elo players' games. So how do we get rid of that disruptive smurfing to an even bigger extent? Well, one thing you could do is you could require more than 10 normal games. That would be one step you could do. You could require 20 or 30 or 40, and all of a sudden by doing that, you don't want to end up making the leveling process take longer, because you could end up with a situation where somebody, if you require 50 normal games or something to be played, and somebody just plays bot games naturally, even a new player, to level 10, 15 or something like that, and then they start playing their normal games, and by the time they've played their 50 normal games, they're actually like level 35 or level 40. You don't want to accidentally extend the leveling process for people who don't realize yet that they have to play normal games. But Smurfs would know, so you could expand the number of normal games that you force people to play. Another thing that you could do, which is very controversial, in my opinion, I don't know whether it's a good idea or not, but essentially what Trueskill does is Trueskill is different than the ELO system and the MMR system in that it uses other metrics about your gameplay, like your KDA, like how your KDA compares to other people playing the same champion in the same role as you, like your damage output, damage taken, deaths, your vision score, basically any information it can potentially get its hands on. And it uses your stats and your performance in the game, even maybe where you move, how frequently you cast your skill shots compared. So maybe a high elo player holds their skill shots more and doesn't cast them as frequently. Maybe on certain champions like Ezreal or Zeri, high elo players actually cast them more. And it uses all this data that it can possibly get its hands on to create a multi-metric system that can just tell pretty quickly where you're likely to be. And it can use that data to say, well, not only do we have, 10 wins or losses one direction or another from normal games, but we also have a metric ton of data on how the player plays that we can use to compare to, players of different ranks. And then we can use that to help place the player more accurately. And that has a positive and negative. The positive is, like he said, you can accurately place people at their appropriate rank in like 5 games of data. So you're going to be able to be really accurate at placing people. By the time someone's finished with their ranked placements plus the 10 normal games, they're probably just straight up going to be at the rank that they should be playing at, which is going to vastly reduce smurfing. Even though this was just a throwaway line, this is probably going to reduce the number of games that real high elo smurfs play in low elo, like iron through gold or platinum. This is going to reduce the number of games by more than any of these other changes they talked about banning accounts and stuff like that, when Trueskill 2 gets implemented in the game. So that's the positive. You can place people super fast. Same thing on the negative end. If a new player comes in and they're bad at the game, it can accurately put that person in iron so that, a couple of games into their ranked climb, they're already getting matches where they're able to win 50, 51, 52% of their games and start their ranked journey and their climb without feeling like they're just hopeless at the game and can't possibly hope to win and to start climbing in ranked. And it might feel bad for sure to be placed in iron, but I started in bronze 3 when bronze 5 was the lowest rank in the game. And it felt bad to be placed there, but it was also motivating. It wasn't necessarily the end of the world. For some players, it will be such a bad placement that maybe they quit. But for a lot of players, it can actually be a motivating factor to want to fix your rank and get your rank to a more respectable rank, or to get your rank to your friend's rank, or whatever, can be a huge motivating factor. And you're more likely to stick around. That is less bad. Being placed in a low rank is less bad and less likely to make you quit than not being able to win any ranked games, or winning, 20, 30% of your ranked games. So now the negative end of this, the downside of Trueskill 2, as you can imagine, is that the incentive structure is potentially manipulatable and all wrong. Meaning that obviously if it takes your KDA and stuff into account, and you know that it does because it says in the paper what factors it does, then you can manipulate the way that you play, in order to try to manipulate your Trueskill factor or whatever to get a better placement and to climb. It's not as bad as people think, though, because wins and losses are still taken into account, and they're by far the primary factor. And let's say that you were manipulating it and you were clicking faster or getting a higher KDA by playing safer in a way that manipulated your rank to be a little bit higher than it should be. If your rank was higher than it should be, what will happen when Trueskill puts you at that new higher rank is if it's higher than you should be with the way that you're playing, then you'll start losing games when you're there, even if your other factors like your KD and your clicking are good or whatever it is. Even if your KD is good, if you're actually bad or you're changing your play style in a way where you have the wrong incentives and so you're playing in a way that's not optimal to win but good for your KDA or something like that, it's not going to balance out and keep you at a rank you shouldn't be at, because wins and losses are more important than anything else. And so if it accidentally puts somebody a little bit too high or somebody manipulates it to go a little bit too high, they'll just lose more games if they're too high. And if they're not losing games, then if they're not losing more than 50% of their games, then they're not too high. So that's sort of the thing that people, I think it is worth worrying about, because it's a crazy radical change, just like the WASD thing. Implementing Trueskill 2 is a gigantic change to League, because it's another fundamental 15-year change to League. It's like we've had this ranked system work with some tweaks and changes along the way, but for the most part, the fundamentals behind the rank system have worked the same way. With the exception, I guess the biggest change would be like roll queue getting added into the game. But the MMR system has essentially, for the most part, with the exception of minor changes, worked the same way for 15 years. So now that we're approaching, in a year or two, we're going to get Trueskill 2 implemented into the game. That is going to be a radical departure. And so I think it's worth questioning. It's worth focusing on and talking about. But as I said, it's accurate and it's not wrong about how players play the game. And if it was wrong, players would simply, if it put you too low, you'd simply win more games because you were at a lower MMR. And even if it didn't like how you were clicking or throwing your abilities, you just win more games anyways if that was still fine, a fine way to play the game. And then you just climb and go back up. Or if it put you too high MMR because you were clicking a certain way or got inserted KDA or whatever the shenanigans metrics it uses, then you would just lose more games because you're a KDA player who's not actually focused on winning the game, and so you end up losing more games when you're pushed to your limit at a higher rank. And either way, you're going to end up about the same rank that you should be, even with the MMR system. So it's not as bad as it sounds, but it's definitely something we'll be talking about and worth questioning, since this is big news that this is being implemented and changing.
We know League's matchmaking is super important to you and to us. It's important to us that we meet those expectations, and we know we have more work to do to get us there.
That's it for us today, but we'll be back in October to share another update on this work. If you want to learn more, check out the devlog that's live now.
All right, we know this is a long one, so here are some final updates. We'll kick off Worlds with the 2025 Anthem on October 10th, which will honor and celebrate all of the legends of the sport from over the years. Then, games will kick off in Beijing on October 14th with finals in Chengdu on November 9th.
Now, we'd love your feedback on anything, of course, but we'd especially love to get all of your takes on WASD as soon as that hits PBE soon. We'll work on a number of things we think are really important for the long-term future of League. WASD is the first one up and the one we're in a position to talk about right now. So please give us all your takes, and we'll talk about some other efforts in a little while.
We've got some dev blogs going out right now, so please check those out and let us know your thoughts. And that's it, so until next time, see ya.
Thanks all.
So that's it. Finally, we got through it. I gotta go, but that's essentially it. That's why we've been here for 2 hours and 40 minutes. It is a gigantic change. To break it down real quick, we've got 3 major changes listed in here. Number 1, that WASD control scheme is coming to League, which means that the mouse is going to probably become irrelevant, because in a game like League, being able to turn at the point of a pin instantly to dodge skill shots is simply too good. Being able to cancel your auto attack when you're kiting, your auto attack follow through animation, and instantly move backwards like a really good AD carry would be able to click on a target and then instantly pull their mouse really fast backwards behind their champion accurately, is really broken for kiting and for ore blocking, which is like kiting forward more or less. It's the same thing as kiting. So it's going to make all of those things really, really broken. So WASD is going to be a fundamental 15-year shift in how most people play League of Legends. Hopefully it's worth the new players that they bring in, but when there's so many other things that they need to do to welcome new players in and retain new players, like a jungle tutorial, the summoner spells, the runes being unlocked, trying to find people a champion in a role that they'd actually enjoy, funneling people into roles maybe that League needs more of, like jungle through a jungle tutorial, unlocking smite, etc. Teaching people more about the game, having a more detailed description of champion abilities and items available in the game. Another thing we didn't talk about with that is that the item sets, which is the only way you can see items in the client, doesn't list all of the details and numbers about all the items either. So you usually have to go look at the wiki or some external site to actually see what the item does, which is terrible, or you have to go in-game in a practice tool to see exactly what it says and does, which most people aren't going to bother doing. So all that stuff needs to be in the client. We talked about other things like guides in the client as well, player guides in the client, giving players access to other players' item sets from guides and things like that in the client, etc. But League's gotten better at some of these things over the years for sure, by reducing champion costs, giving more champions away for free as people level, at least you can see the items in the client now. You used to not be able to. There are ability descriptions, as we saw in the client. They're maybe just not super thorough. They're the brief ones. You should have an advanced and a brief one, let's say a detailed one and a not detailed one, like they do for other stuff, where you can see the show more details thing and stuff like that, etc., etc. So I just feel like if they're going to do this and it's going to bring in a lot of new players, fix all this other stuff at the same time before it gets implemented, or fix the other stuff first, even better, because those things they can fix to help new players and bring in new players and retain new players without affecting everyone else in the whole game, something we've learned for 15 years. It's going to be a radical departure and change to be going to WASD. Their stuff that they keep talking about it being optional and stuff like that is just, it comes across as ignorant, and because they think that they're making this change and it's not going to be that big of a deal, and everyone's telling them that it's going to be a huge deal and that everyone's going to have to switch to it, and they're like, don't worry, you don't have to switch to it. It's like, well, yeah, you do. And they even said you don't have to switch to it even if you want to remain competitively viable. I mean, it's a joke that they would pretend like that's the case when they should know it's not. So it's two things. One, it could either be that they know that it's a huge change and that people are going to have to switch to it, and instead of saying suck it up, we need to do it to bring new players into the game, they're just lying to downplay the negative effect of it for people who are used to playing the other way. Or the alternative is they're not being, kind of manipulative about it. They just don't know how big of a deal it is. And if that's also concerning, because if they don't know how big of a deal it is, then what are they doing even messing with it, right? Or being the ones to oversee implementing it. Also have some concerns about like the way that the people who are in charge of it talked about it. They don't sound like they know how high-elo players auto attack or click, which is concerning. Maybe I need to finish my series of videos on like cursor placement, auto attacking and stuff like that fast, so that Riot can learn how a high-elo player auto attacks and casts their abilities and clicks and places their cursor and moves their map and their mouse and all that stuff. That's a good idea. I will put those out fast. They're also going to become irrelevant if I don't put them out because of WASD, so that's a problem. Okay, then we have the big changes to smurfing. Obviously, there's a lot of gray area there, But for the most part, the main things that they're going to be doing is banning a huge wave of accounts that people have bought that were usually leveled up using bots. That people are either currently using as Smurfs, but they paid for them instead of hand leveling them themselves, or haven't been sold yet that would be used to Smurf or to boost in the future. And then they're also going to ban, hopefully, a bunch of boosters and a bunch of duo boosters and stuff like that. Hopefully they don't, as we talked about, catch a bunch of innocent people who are just like duoing with their friends, or like live with someone, or like share a computer, like siblings a lot of times share a computer and stuff like that. That's not my case, but I know that a lot of people do that, etc. So hopefully that's fine. It sounds like obviously hand leveling your own accounts, fine. Using Smurfs for personal use, fine. Learning a new role on a Smurf, fine. But playing with your friends or a spouse or a girlfriend or whatever, especially if they're a lower rank than you, is questionable gray area. And playing on a Smurf account on your main champion and main role is questionable gray area. They're probably not going to ban these people, but maybe some of them will be caught up in the other ban waves, especially playing with friends or a girlfriend or something like that, because it's hard to tell that apart from duo boosting. Especially if you're doing really well and playing a lot of games. And so it's the death of e-girls, essentially, which is fine. And so those are main changes for Smurfing. Then, of course, you have Trueskill 2, which they're still working on. We got the first news about Trueskill 2 in maybe over a year, which is that Trueskill 2 is not implemented, if we're to believe Riot, in the game yet. But they are very close to implementing it in ranked, because they are testing it in normal games in Korea, which is literally one step off of putting it into ranked everywhere. And it sounds like they're probably going to do it because their feedback and results on it are very positive, which is they think that they can accurately put someone at their main rank or deserved rank on whatever role or champion they're playing in 5 games. And if they can do that, then, well, you have 5 games of placement and you have 10 normal games of data to work with as well. So they're probably going to be able to tell, okay, this is a Masters player, and put them. I mean, again, I don't even know how that's going to work for super high elo players, because Emerald 1 is the highest you're allowed to be placed at the start of a season. So I don't know if that's how that would work for a fresh account, if you would only be able to go Emerald 1. Maybe that would be still in the game as a safety feature, in case they're wrong on such a small sample size. But yeah, I mean, you could probably see maybe super high elo players instantly placed into Emerald 1, and then obviously quickly moving through Diamond into Masters, which would really reduce the amount of disruptive Smurf games on low elo players' games, which would be really nice for them, and would reduce people's ability to even to duo boost and stuff like that, because if their skill gets picked up, then they would instantly be placed too high to be able to duo boost, or whatnot. So that, Trueskill could be interesting for those reasons. Again, we have concerns with Trueskill incentivizing the wrong thing, but even if it does incentivize the wrong thing, since wins and losses are much more important, if it put you too high, again, you just end up losing if you're a KDA player and not that good. And if you, get placed too low, you probably just end up winning because the games are easy, even if it doesn't like your play style and stuff like that, and then you go back up to where you should be. So I think, in the long run, it'll calibrate totally fine and won't be that bad. But it's definitely worth questioning, because that is another, like WASD, 15-year, generational change to the game, where we're moving away from the rank system that we've had more or less has been the same MMR system for 15 years. So when that gets implemented in the next year or two, maybe even in the next couple of months, that is going to be crazy. We'll see how that goes. One thing I'm thinking about, too, that I'm a little bit worried about, with Trueskill is, if that's the case, that you play bot games and then you play your 10 normal games to get to level 30, and you play 5 placement games. If you instantly place into Emerald 1, if you're like a Master Plus skilled player, are you going to be able to get to Masters on a Smurf account in, let's say, 10, 20, 30 games? And if you're instantly going to be able to get to Masters in 10, 20, 30 games, is it not going to be a problem that people are going to be able to sell? I guess they'd be able to ban the accounts with Vanguard like they're talking about. I would worry that the amount of Masters accounts that you would be able to create, if it's fast to Smurf to Masters, you would be able to create and sell so many Masters accounts that there would be a lot of, like, maybe 10 times the number of boosted players in Masters or whatever, like bot account players in Masters. So that's a concern. But they have Vanguard now, and they're talking about banning those bought and sold accounts anyways. So if they can do that accurately and a lot in large volume, then maybe that won't be a problem that Trueskill creates. But that would be something I would worry about. Is Trueskill going to allow people to create those accounts to sell easier? In the same way, you could manipulate Trueskill by trolling really hard for 5 games, and it'd be really hard to get banned if you're trolling on such a small number of games too. Usually it takes quite a larger number of games than 5 to get banned. So what if you intentionally, like, iron accounts are very valuable too, right? So what if you're able to play your 5 games practically AFK, clicking really slowly on locked camera, missing your skill shots and taking a bunch of damage and not doing very much damage and having a very bad KDA, etc., etc. You learn how to exhibit all the behaviors of a bad player, and you get an account pretty much instantly placed into Iron 4 after your placement games. And now all of a sudden you can sell that Iron 4 account because there's so many of them to players who want to Smurf but can't because of the whole Trueskill thing. And now they're able to start their rank journey in Iron 4. And even with Trueskill, starting in Iron 4, it's going to take them, they're going to get more games on their Smurf account before they reach their main rank. So people looking to just pub stomp will be able to buy and have access to more Iron accounts for cheaper if people are able to get accounts to Iron faster, if that makes sense. So same problem with Masters, but in reverse. But again, if Riot's Trueskill is able to catch all of those bought and sold accounts and ban them accurately, then maybe it won't be that big of a deal. But if it takes 50 games or a large sample size to ban them and to be confident you're not banning innocent people, then maybe that's a problem as well. A lot to think about there, a lot to unpack. Let me know what you guys think about those 3 major changes, etc. And there's some other little things as well. Oh, jungle timers and summoner spell timers as well, which I think is a great addition to the game, etc. I love that we're returning to the base map again. By the way, I'm not a fan of the orange map and then the blue map. Blue map's nice; it's not too bad. But looking forward to getting back to Summoner's Rift. With that being said, good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day.